the inaugural function of 16th edition of INDIACom 2022. Technically sponsored by IEEE Delhi section and supported by Computer Society India, CSI, IETE, ISTE, and IITP. MVSR Engineering College, since 1981, is making significant contributions towards the excellence in engineering education and has always maintained high standards in imparting technical knowledge to the students. Without any further delay, we look forward the presence of Dr. Sandhya, Professor CSE Department, onto the dais, please. With equal pleasure, I now invite our head of the department, Professor J. Prasanna Kumar sir, onto the dais, please. With equal pleasure, I now request our beloved principal, Dr. G. Kanakadurga ma'am, onto the dais, please. I am pleased to invite our secretary, Maturi Shri Educational Society, Shri M. Krishna Kumar sir, onto the dais, please. With equal pleasure, I invite our chairman, Maturi Shri Educational Society, Dr. K.P. Srinivas Rao, onto the dais, please. Dr. K.P. Srinivas Rao is a consultant ophthalmologist at Century Eye Care Center. He completed his fellowship from Moorfield Eye Hospital and University College of London. He has several research publications in national and international conference to his credit. In addition to being the chairman of Maturi Educational Society, he is also the vice chairman of Sridevi Educational Society. A lot of reforms were brought about in the college since his inception as chairman, be it autonomous status, accreditation grades, improved infrastructure, and huge support for research. He is reimagining and recreating brand MVSR. You are welcome, sir. It is my honor, more than a pleasure, to welcome our chief guest, Dr. Ravi Vadlamani, sir, Professor IDRBT, to grace the dais. Dr. Ravi Vadlamani, a professor in Institute for Development and Research in Banking Technology. He is a spearhead, the Center of Excellence in Analytics, the first of its kind in India. He holds a PhD in soft computing from Osmania University and RWTH Aachen, Germany. Earlier, he worked in faculty at National University of Singapore from 2002 to 2005. He worked in RWTH under DAD long-term fellowship from 97 to 99. He has close to 34 years of rich experience in research and teaching. He has been working in soft computing, evolutionary neuro, fuzzy, data, text, multi-criteria optimization, and social media analytics, and also in time series, bankruptcy, prediction, and analytical CRM. He has published more than 245 research papers in peer-reviewed international national journals and conferences. He has 9,067 citations in his credit and his H index of 44. He also edited several books of several publishers along with Professor Ashwini Kumar Shekhuri. He is a referee of 45 international journals, associate editor for Swarm and Evolutionary Computations. Dr. Ravi Vadlamani, further, he is listed as top 1.3% scientist in the field of artificial intelligence and image processing as an independent study done by Stanford University and Elsevier. To his credit, he is recognized as 61st most reputed computer scientist in India by Research.com. He consults and advises various Indian banks and several research organizations. He is a PhD examiner for IISc, IIM Calcutta, Mumbai University, Christ University, and several prestigious universities, including Auckland University of Technology. He has research collaborations with many professors from IITMs, IIMs, and IIScs, and reputed universities in US, Belgium, and New Zealand. We are honored to be with you, sir. More than a pleasure. Thank you so much, sir. To begin this auspicious occasion, may I now invite all the dignitaries on the dais to start the proceedings by lighting the lamp. I also request our management members to join the session. May I now request our colleague KV Sri Lakshmi to start the invocation.
या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रान्विता या वीणा वरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेत पद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युत शंकर प्रकृतिभिः देवै सदा पूजिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा.
Thank you, Sri Lakshmi. I request our chairman, Dr. K.P. Srinivas Rao, sir, to declare the conference officially.
It's a great honor. I declare this international conference open. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now request our head of the department, Professor J. Prasanna Kumar, sir, to give the welcome address.
It's a very happy morning to all of you on a very happy occasion. Why I said happy occasion, I think we got a chance to participate in an international conference, and that I am even more happy because CSE department is organizing this, and special thanks to the chair of the session, Dr. Sandhya, co-chair Dr. Rajesh Kulkarni, and convener Dr. Sirisha. Your respected Vadlamani Ravi Garu for being today's chief guest for the inaugural session. Sir has been very supportive and accepted our invitation. Thank you very much, sir, for being here today with us. And Honorable Chairman, Dr. K.P. Srinivas Rao Garu for Maturi Education Society. He is always there to support us for any kind of academic or research activity, be it any department. In fact, the sir is and the management is after us to do such activities. And we are really fortunate to have a wonderful management for guiding us and supporting us all kinds of activities in terms of improving this academic and research areas. Madam is always there with a smile to support us and encourage us and guide us for all academic activities. When we go for take initiative to do one program, she asks when is the next one. So that is the kind of enthusiasm she has got. Thank you very much, madam, for being very supportive. Krishna Kumar sir doesn't talk much, but does everything in a minute. And thank you very much, sir, for all the continuous support you've been extending as the Secretary, Maturi Education Society. And though some of the honorable members are sitting in the audience, they have been very, very supportive. And especially I would like to mention Vasudeva Garu has been very, very supportive for all kind of activities. He's a joint secretary of the Maturi Education Society. And we also have Sudhakar Garu, the treasurer of the society. Thank you very much, sir, for your continuous support. And the most important, my colleague, Dr. S. Sandhya, for the initiative she has taken. She is also a very silent worker and a very good team player. And I'm actually very fortunate to be leading a wonderful team of CSC staff. And I'm blessed to have that staff. Thank you. Once again, sir, on formally, we are blessed to have you as our chief guest for today's function. And we can't think of any other person other than Ravi Garu. Once again, he is actually held a session in the earlier workshop in the physical mode, also on a virtual mode. This is the third session he will be associating with MVSR. And we are fortunate to have his association for the years actually, and we expect his association and his partnership with Sir and his Center of Excellence in the years to come. Sir is heading a Center of Excellence and Analytics, which is one of its kind in India. In IDRBT, he is a professor in IDRBT and spearheading this Center of Excellence. So those who are really interested, enthusiastic in analytics area, I think you won't find any other person other than him. Once again, I would like to thank the management for encouraging us to doing activities like this, and along with principal, vice principal, and all my staff who have been very, very supportive and taking the initiatives, taking the ownership, and taking this program. The most important contributors, and I would like to take a minute to tell about a mentor and mentee system which we have introduced in the Department of CS a year ago. In fact, we could see the results today as majority of the paper presenters or the papers which have been accepted are from MVSR. And thanks to my sincere thanks to all the mentors for encouraging, motivating, and making them get a feel of this research area. Thank you very much, sir, each one of you. I mean it from my heart, and you did a great difference. And you gave an exposure to the faculty to present and make their papers accept an international conference. In fact, you have shown them a way. I'm sure that people will take that and move forward. Thank you very much. And most importantly, those students, those advanced students, those mentees who have taken it in the right spirit and participated with enthusiasm, your energies are really a great boost to this organization. Without your participation, I'm sure there would not be much to boost off. Thank you very much for your participation and encouragement. I would like to extend my thanks to directly people who are involved in the team of Dr. Sandhya, Dr. Rajesh, and Dr. Sirisha. We have Venkata, Assistant Professor from CSC, Dina Madam, and MVR Jyotishri Madam, Lakshmi Madam, Murli Krishna Sir, and Fani Prasad, Madhu, Sri Lakshmi, and all my staff who are indirectly supported this event. So one good thing is I think we started enjoying the achievements of our colleagues. That's a good trend. And today, I think this should give a way or motivate people to start bigger programs in the international level in the years to come. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. And I wish this program a smooth run and successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I now request Dr. Sandhya, idea behind ARSAMA, to brief about the journey of ARSAMA.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, my dear colleagues, students, and all the viewers online to whom we are streaming live right now. A very good morning. On behalf of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, we welcome you to the one-day special session of Advances in Remote Sensing and Medical Applications using Machine Learning and Deep Learning. I thought I'll talk about two aspects here. One, as you can see from the banners, the posters, and all the publicity, we are holding a special session as part of an international conference. So I need to be able to justify why INDIACom, because we see an international conference being held at a lot of places quite regularly. So INDIACom, as can be seen, is the 16th edition. So it's been continuously being held annually by the same institute, Bharati Vidya Institute at New Delhi, for the last 15 years. Initially, it was a national conference and then achieved international status 8 years ago. And this is the 9th edition of the international conference being held. The conference has support from a lot of collaboration, I would say, from a lot of professional societies, including CSI, IETE, and IEEE New Delhi. It has support from a lot of other universities across the country. And if we see the contributors to the conference, I would say it has got true global presence because the papers have come from all over the world to the conference. The total number of papers this year received to the conference is about 1,200, out of which 175 papers have been accepted for presentation. And out of the 175 papers which have been accepted, after presentation and review by IEEE, I'm sure most of them would be published as proceedings of the conference in IEEE Explore. Out of 175, only 35 papers have been selected for publication into a journal, which is Scopus indexed with a CITE score of more than 2. So I think I have established quite well that it was worth being associated with the conference and the team which is organizing the conference. So the second aspect I would like to talk about is the theme of the special session. Why the theme? So when we talk about applications, the domains today, you know, as teachers set question papers, we always have that view. We don't want all the students to get the full marks, neither we want all the students to fail the exam. We have to set somewhere in between. So we wanted a theme wherein we could attract papers to the theme, but not too general enough that we can take in any paper from the author. So I would say we chose two domains, which are quite opposite in terms of the necessary requirements of processing. For example, we take medical images, you see X-ray, MRI, or CT scan kind of images, and try to compare them to the visual images we take outside. They have no clear boundaries, not enough texture, no color most of the times, and still they are being used for diagnosis and prognosis. Wide range of applications using images from medical applications today. Then the other end, we have remote sensing images. We are talking about satellite images today available with a resolution of 0.1 meters from a satellite. And the amount of content available in an image from a satellite of resolution 0.3, 0.5, 0.1 meters, there is too much information, too many boundaries, too much color. And again, we have innumerable applications which use such images. So I can say we are at both ends. We have considered medical applications at one end and remote sensing, and everything else probably I can put somewhere in between, say a visual image or outdoor images. Everything probably can be placed somewhere in between in terms of complexity of requirements. And also, the kind of applications we have in remote sensing are quite multidisciplinary. We were trying to attract papers from, say, civil engineering department or from mechanical engineering department also because they do work with such kind of images. Of course, I don't think I need to justify why machine learning and deep learning. You will question me, why not deep learning, if I don't include the word. That has become the buzzword today of whatever we do in computer science. In fact, the best example I would say is our final year projects. More than 80% of the projects use deep nets in some way or other. So that had to be included as part of the theme. So the theme of the conference is considering applications from remote sensing and medical areas using machine learning and deep learning. And I should say, we did receive good number of papers, and I will take a minute to elaborate on the review process. So the first level has been to submit the papers. Orders had to submit the papers directly to INDIACom. We are associated with INDIACom, so nowhere we were involved in taking the papers. They publicized, we did publicize, but they got the papers. And the first level of review was with respect to plagiarism check using Turnitin software. The paper was accepted for the next level only if the plagiarism content was less than about 15%. So that's the first round of reviews that have happened. After that first level, we were sent the papers which they thought can be considered for the review process. We got the papers after checking from Turnitin software for plagiarism. Only those papers we had to send to the TPC members. And I would say our TPC members include professors from IIIT, a professor from BITS Hyderabad, Mr. Dr. Subba, who is a chair IEEE Hyderabad section, Dr. Tilottama Goswami, who is chair ACM Hyderabad section, in addition to the senior professors we have in the department, Dr. Venugopal Rao and Dr. Seshumanand and Professor Akhil Khare. So all of us, and we did make sure no paper had more than one internal reviewer because each paper had to be sent to 3 reviewers. After this review process, we didn't take a decision on the paper. The decision was not ours. We were only doing the legwork of sending the papers to the reviewer and collecting the review comments. We did collate all the comments and send the final consolidated sheet to INDIACom. And then we earned their trust. It was then they started believing in us, saying, yeah, you're doing a good job. Till then it was like, can we not, can we not. At some point we were almost thinking of dropping the whole idea. But then when they said, no, you're doing a good job, I think the review process has been quite good. So we'll continue. And then we started asking them, we'll conduct the session at MVSR. To which finally they could give the approval. So that completed the second level of review process. Then they had to give a decision. The decision was from INDIACom. So all the review comments have been sent to the technical committee along with the papers. They took a decision. The technical committee of INDIACom took a decision and finally sent the papers back along with the decision. I should say from the list of papers which have been reviewed to about 24, only 3 papers were accepted without revision. The rest of the papers, about 40% have been accepted with minor revisions and the rest of them have been accepted only with major revisions. So the papers which have been sent for major revisions again had to follow the entire process again. It was the loop again. Again when they submit, they had to go through the plagiarism check, the review process, and again the decision by the technical program committee of INDIACom. And this process, the Herculean task of completing the reviews, went on for almost 2.5 months. After which we registered and then got the final list of accepted papers. I should say I had great support from the team, all the team which sir has mentioned, our HOD sir has mentioned. Great support from the authors who have submitted the papers because they have been patient enough to do all the revisions. And great support from the team of INDIACom. So it has been a great experience and I believe this is the first baby step we are taking towards a long journey of conducting a great international conferences in the future, wherein we will invite special sessions from the other colleges. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandhya. It was a very elaborate speech and a very clear idea everyone have got about INDIACom. Thank you for briefing. I now request our beloved Vice Principal, Professor SGS Murthy, sir, to address the gathering.
Chief guest of the day, Dr. Ravi Vadlamani, Chairman, Maturi Education Society, Secretary, Maturi Education Society, Krishna Kumar Garu, my dear colleagues, Praspitsana, Dr. Kanakadurga, Principal of the college, and Dr. Sandhyam. When I was asked to speak on this for a couple of minutes, I was trying to compose my thoughts. At the outset, the topic for the special session, which is a subset of the reputed international conference, has a lot of social and societal relevance. The ARSAMA, the way it has been acronymed. Advances in remote sensing and medical applications using machine learning and deep learning. I happen to be a professor in civil engineering, so I have some insight into remote sensing, and as a part of generic knowledge, some information on medical applications. Both of them have a lot of societal relevance, and the deliberations that will happen today in the course of day will ensure a lot of benefit to the society as a whole. Remote sensing, an important concept of remote sensing, is what we call as a land use and land cover detection, which will go in a long way in identifying what are the vulnerable flood zones in a watershed, in an area. A particular domain which had a particular land use over a period of time changes by virtue of change in land cover, because of which land use changes per se. This is the controversy that is raging around whether we need to delete Geo 111 or otherwise in the recent past. There used to be a software called ArcGIS, by which we were trying to ascertain all these parameters in remote sensing domain. Now with artificial intelligence tools, this research in terms of land use, land cover in the domain of remote sensing will get more predictable and will get more effective. I'm able to see there are 18 publications which would be deliberated upon in the course of the day. And as Dr. Sandhya has pointed out, quality has been the bottom line, and a lot of filters have been introduced to ensure not so quality-based publications do not form a part of this proceeding. I am sure this is a baby step. Today we are hosting a special session for an international conference held elsewhere. Day is not far when we will hold an international conference and other institutions will hold special sessions as we are doing today. All good things will have an humble beginning, and this is one such instance. I'm sure the organizers have put in a lot of effort. It should have been over the past 1 year or so, and I'm aware the amount of background efforts in the background that would have gone into to make this session happen, and more so with the required or desired quality. Wish them all grand success and God bless all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now request our dear and diligent principal, Dr. G. Kanakadurga ma'am, to address the gathering.
Respected members of the management, Honorable Chairman, Honorable Secretary, Treasurer, Joint Secretary, Professor Prasanna Kumar, Dr. Sandhya, today's Vice Principal, today's Chief Guest, Dr. Ravi Vadlamani, professors from various departments, heads, my dear colleagues, a very good morning. I am very much delighted to be a part of this international conference, IEEE. This is the first of its kind. We are here organizing a special session. So I would like to congratulate team CSE with a great team leader, Professor Prasanna Kumar. So congratulations to the department. And I thank our today's chief guest. Sir, heard a lot about you. We are pleased to have you here. Thank you so much for being with us and enlightening our budding authors. I would like to congratulate the authors because without you, there is no conference. So I think you are the major stakeholder of this particular event. Dr. Sandhya, she has explained very clearly what is the process they went through of the reviews. It is very important to have several stages of reviews. So for a national conference, when we organized, we went through 3 reviews. So international conference, I know it must have gone through several reviews. So I would like to congratulate the authors once again. And about this mentor-mentee program, I'm trying to recollect because when we had an interaction with this department, CSE and IT, remember, Janaya was the one who asked us, ma'am, why can't you give us the support? There are so many doctorates. Why can't they mentor us? So, yeah, it is from Janaya this idea has coined and Professor Prasanna Kumar has taken it forward. So, thank you very much, sir. IT department is also following this. I hope the other departments also take a lead. Mechanical, I think, also has started this. So, in electronics, we call it as bootstrapping. I don't know how many of you have heard bootstrap circuit. So, we have, for a common man, I would like to explain what is bootstrapping. You pull the lace of your shoe to tighten it up and hold it to the foot. So, the circuit actually does that. It holds the circuit and maintains the gain in the bandwidth. So that is called bootstrapping. So the department has started bootstrapping and I hope it will continue and move ahead. All the best for the INDIACom. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I now request our visionary chairman, Dr. K.P. Srinivas Rao, sir, to address the gathering.
Respected Chief Guest of the Day, Ravi Vadlamani garu, Principal, Vice Principal, all the head of the departments, my colleagues from the society, staff and students, a very good morning to you all. In fact, at the outset, I would like to thank our Chief Guest, Ravi Vadlamani garu. I know he's a very busy man, but thank you, sir, for taking time to be a part of this conference. From the management side, I would like to thank and appreciate the efforts of CSE department, Prasanna Kumar garu, Sandhya ma'am, Siddhisha and Kulkarni and an entire team for making this happen. I also congratulate all presenters because Sandhya was explaining about the rigorous scrutiny which happened. So I'm sure your papers would be one of a kind. And I thank INDIACom for allowing us. But Sandhya has explained why they have allowed us to have this session. But she forgot one thing. They would have known that your chairman is a doctor, so they allowed this. On this note, I congratulate and I hope this conference is a huge success. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's my honor to request our chief guest to share his thoughts.
A very warm welcome and very good morning to everybody sitting here. And thank you, Mr. K. Srinivasarao garu, the chairman of the society, and other dignitaries on the dais. It's actually, I would say, the third occasion of myself being associated with MVSR College. The first instance I remember, it was on 6th of January, 2020. I was invited here for delivering a session. I forgot the occasion, actually, the workshop name, but 6th January, right? And then 2021, again, I was invited for an online session because of the COVID, but then you people were very active. That's what I was praising, right? And now we again had the great occasion to come together with the physical mode. I'm very happy to be associated with this international conference, the special session. I could see the kind of rigor and the quality control that has happened during the review process. Hats off to you, Sandhya madam, and your team. I've been associated with various international conferences and various journals. These kind of things, hearing from a college, not so well known, let me tell you, for research, okay? And if you are doing this, I would say these are not baby steps, these are giant steps to our stardom, okay? Whenever I was invited to Tamil Nadu, a lot of engineering colleges over there, SRM, VIT, and other Satyabama engineering colleges, I used to lament, why this doesn't happen in Telugu land. Why research is not taken so seriously in Telugu land. Thanks to the guidance and forevision, I would say, of your chairman, that all these things are happening now. And sir, I think big kudos to you. I'm sure you will support the organization and the college and the faculty over here towards the research activities. Well, the topic is chosen very interestingly, as Madam said, remote sensing and medical applications. So we started foraying into machine learning, deep learning, AI, ML, data science, and then soft computing, data mining, all these buzzwords, right? So for the last 34 years, we have been working in various disciplines, various engineering college, various institutions, both in India and abroad. Interesting thing is, when these buzzwords are coined, a lot of confusion arises. Not only just for the, I would say, novices, even for the established academics and even researchers. So today, I made a kind of statement to myself, at least 20 minutes of my talk, the keynote, the tutorial, I'm going to spend on the unification, I developed a unified theory of data science and AML. I'm going to demystify all this jargon to you very clearly, and then I took it as a kind of job, that is entrusted to me by God. I have to do this. I'm in this field. I have to do justice to whatever I've been doing. So this idea came to me when one of the engineering colleges in Hyderabad invited me about 4 years ago. Then a lot of questions were. Then they kept aside my talk. They asked only about the jargon. Then I said, no, we have to do justice to this. But then, okay, coming to deep learning applications, as Madam said, yes. There is a lot of rage about deep learning. Nowadays, let me just caution to you that deep learning is not a panacea. It cannot solve all your problems, right? That is something that I want to percolate in my the keynote as well as the tutorial. Machine learning algorithms are so-called shallow learning algorithms still do a good job, okay, provided you tweak them properly. But then, having said that, deep learning has made inroads into a lot of fields like image processing. Ophthalmology comes to very close to my research interest. I just came to know that your chairman is also an ophthalmologist. So that's very heartening, sir, to hear this. And we can have some collaboration in the future. Recently, in 2021, we published a paper on diabetic retinopathy prediction using deep learning. To our surprise, to me and my student, this already received 28 citations. And let me tell you, the conference is not so well known, but people all over the world are citing our paper. So that is something that means we have done some really good work. We also want to extend this kind of things to glaucoma prediction. That's another kind of debilitating disease for the eyes. And then with your principal being a kind of qualified clinician as well as an ophthalmologist, I'm sure this particular institute can do a lot of work in this area. So apart from this, the word of caution about deep learning, we are becoming more and more red AI. the so-called environmental aspects are not considered. Just to give you one perspective, with this I stop. The GPT-3, which is the transformer, the state-of-the-art transformer that is now developed by Google DeepMind, I will tell you the kind of carbon footprint it leaves. As a perspective, they said, once you train that using a lot of GPU processors, the kind of carbon dioxide that is released is equivalent to the carbon dioxide released by a fully loaded plane from New York to San Francisco, both ways. So why are we spending so much of energy? Why are we leaving so much of carbon footprint in order to make a lot of developments in green, in AI and ML developments? So this particular environmental aspect is actually bugging the researchers. Now there are alternatives. Green AI aspects are coming in to reduce the carbon footprint. And there are other aspects like FEAT principles. I will try to mention that in my tutorial. Thank you so much once again for inviting me here. Have a wonderful evening, wonderful morning, and then wonderful sessions in the what is it called? ARSAMA. Very nicely coined acronym. Okay, very interesting acronym. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for enlightening us. I now request Dr. Rajesh Kulkarni, sir, Associate Professor, Computer Science and Engineering Department, to propose the vote of thanks.
Got the first. Very warm good morning to dear friends. The list is huge actually. I'd like to express my gratitude to all esteemed authors who contributed for the first ever International IEEE conference session at MVSR premises. I extend my gratitude to our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. V. Ravi, to take out time from his busy schedule to grace the event. The event grand success was only possible because of the overwhelming support from our beloved management members, Dr. K.P. Srinivas Rao Garu, Chairman, MES, Sri Krishna Kumar Garu, Secretary, MES, Sri M.V. Vasudev Rao Garu, Joint Secretary, MES, Sri Sudhakar Jupudi Garu, Treasurer, MES, Sri M.V.S. Pavan Kumar Garu, Member, MES. Our heartfelt gratitude to all the management members for the overwhelming support. All the quality initiatives, including this conference, are because of the gentle push from our belligerent principal, Dr. G. Kanakadurga. Thank you, madam. Our beloved vice principal, the founding pillar who brought accolades to MVSR College, Sri S.G.S. Murthy Garu, Professor S.G.S. Murthy Garu. Thank you, sir. Dean Academics, Venugopal Rao Garu. Dean Examinations, Gajan Garu. Thank you for blessing us. All the heads of the departments of MVSR College, thank you. Our dear head of the department, Professor Prasanna Kumar, no words can describe his 24/7 efforts for college development. His gentle and humble way of making any task look so simple, including this conference, which we felt will never happen at some time. Our deepest gratitude, sir. Our claim to fame as host of first international conference special session ARSAMA under the aegis of INDIACom-2022 was possible because of the hosts at INDIACom, Dr. Huda, thank you, Dr. Joshi, thank you, the Delhi team. INDIACom permitted us to conduct this session. Thank you, and once again our heartfelt gratitude to them. The architects of the conference, Dr. Sandhya, Dr. Sirisha, heartfelt gratitude. I'd also like to thank myself for giving a contribution. No event can be imagined without the strenuous efforts of the organizing team. Venkata sir, Murli sir, Diana madam, Jyotirshi madam, T. Lakshmi madam, Sri Lakshmi madam, Fani Prasad sir, student volunteers, all teaching and non-teaching staff of CSC, our heartfelt gratitude. I now declare conclusion of the inaugural, am I right? And the tutorial will begin post this, and post lunch, you'll enjoy all the sessions. Thank you once again from CSC team.
Thank you, sir. I would like to say, apart from the organizing team, all the faculty of CSC department were supportive. There's Sujan, he's not a part of organizing team. He's working 4 days here. So all the faculty, apart from organizing team, are together working for conference. Thank you so much. I also thank the placement team for the tremendous support for this conference. Thank you. All your presence here made it a wonderful morning. I once again thank you all for joining ARSAMA. Thank you once again.
I request all the faculty to please join us for tea. The tea is being served in the next room. Please do join us for the tea.
Good morning to everyone present here today. I extend a hearty welcome to all. I would like to thank you all for joining this session on overview of deep learning approaches for image applications. I would like to invite Dr. Ravi Vadlamani to take over the session. Dr. Ravi Vadlamani is a professor in the Institute for Development and Research Banking Technology, Hyderabad, where he spearheads the Center of Excellence in Analytics, the first of its kind in India. He holds a PhD in soft computing from Osmania University, Hyderabad, and RWTH Aachen, Germany. Earlier, he worked as a faculty at National University of Singapore from 2002 to 2005. He worked in RWTH Aachen under DAAD a long-term fellowship from 1997 to 1999. Over to Professor Vadlamani Ravi.
Thank you. Some water, please. You can play the PPT. Yeah, it's here. It doesn't work. Doesn't work. Oh, okay. Okay, fine. Full screen. Full screen. No, it's not full. Okay. Okay. So I once again thank the organizers of ARSAMA as part of INDIACom for inviting me here to deliver this tutorial on overview of deep learning methods and applications. For the next 2 hours, we'll be talking about the unified theory of data science and AI/ML put together, followed by introduction to some of the important deep learning architectures and their place in the machine learning literature. And then we will have some of the case studies conducted as part of our research activities with our MTech and PhD students. That's briefly the outline. So before we go ahead, let me put this slide about the terminology. So data science and AML being a kind of interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary area, you will come across various kind of jargon, with respect to, let's say, target variable, and then dependent variable, output variable, response variable, output feature, attribute. So these are all synonymous. Madam, I'm leaving the slides here. So please don't take pics, okay? But beyond the slides, I speak many things, okay, that you should be asking questions about. Fine. And so these are all synonymous. And then predictor variables, independent variables, input variables, explanatory variables, input features or attributes. These are again synonymous. And then rows, observations, records, instances, samples, columns, fields, attributes, features, variables. So within every box, they're all synonymous. This is something that I want to state upfront, because depending on the background that you come from, whether you are coming from operations research or statistics or even computer science, machine learning, pattern recognition, you will have used different kind of terminology. But let me just mention that these are all synonymous, and this is not unfortunately taught in any textbook or any website or even in a blog. That is actually a starting point of confusion for the students and novices. That is the reason first slide is this only, okay? We can revisit this if somebody has a doubt later point in time, because without this, we can't go further, let alone doing the research, okay? So I start with the, as I said, unification theory, unified theory that I developed about data science and AML. To start with the fundamental stuff called descriptive statistics. right? Statistics has got two flavors, rather three flavors. First one is descriptive statistics, where we learnt about bar charts, histograms, pie charts, box plots, scatter plots, stacked bar charts, etc., which are essentially used for depicting the information pictorially, whatever information is available in the raw data. Please remember, raw data. And what we are trying to get out of these pictures is only information. It is not knowledge. But then we move further. There is some other discipline called applied statistics, where we got a host of models to solve regression problems, classification problems, clustering problems, and then outlier detection problems. Right. So these things are developed at least 100 to 200 years ago, much before machine learning came into existence. So then we have a third flavor, which started as a competing discipline when some of the statisticians were challenged. Why all of our theory has been residing only in the kind of classrooms? Why it is not seeing the light of the day in terms of applications and popularity vis-a-vis the machine learning counterparts? Therefore, a group of statisticians from Stanford University and Berkeley University, they came together. They started churning out the world's first decision tree in the form of classification and regression tree, CART they call it. Only after this, 2 years later, your ID3 algorithm was proposed by Ross Quinlan from Australia. But many other people are not aware of this development. They think that decision tree is coming from Ross Quinlan and machine learning community. It is not factually correct. So we go ahead and then Mars, lot of acronyms I threw here. I will not have time to actually expand many of them because you can see 168 slides I have prepared for this tutorial. Tutorial means tutorial, right? In an international conference setting. Anyway, so the multivariate adaptive regression splines, LARS, and then lasso regression, ridge regression, logistic regression, latent divisional allocation, SVM, SVR, Bayesian belief models, probabilistic machine learning, conditional random field theory, Gaussian mixer models, kernel density estimation, so on and so forth. So these are all coming from the statistical learning theory, or you can say computational statistics. Some people also call it as statistical computing, where a kind of computational flavor is afforded to some of the traditional statistical models. But then, the moment you say computational flavor, you'll be tempted to compare them with the machine learning algorithms, and that is what has precisely happened. And in the process, the competition actually resulted in better and better algorithms. It is better meant for the community at large. Now, if you see the state of the art, the statistics department and the computer science department are actually started merging, in big universities like MIT, Berkeley, Stanford, etc. They'll have dual appointments in both the departments. Then we have regression types. Okay. Then we started with simple linear regression. We have multiple linear regression, polynomial regression, intrinsically linear regression, principal component regression, lasso regression, ridge regression, logistic regression, Poisson regression, Cox regression, quantile regression, isotonic regression, hedonic regression, and the list goes on. I could not accommodate some more here. Okay, otherwise the font becomes very small. You cannot read it. Okay. So regressions are of so many types. Again, all of them are useful for solving various problems, not just necessarily in business, but also in scientific disciplines. Then, okay, so that is the three flavors of statistics we have seen. And then when these things were developed about till 30, 40 years ago, the data flood was not there. The data generation was not so much. Therefore, people used to say in statistics, if you have a sample size 30, they call it small size, small sample. Anything more than 30 samples, they call it large sample. Nowadays in big data, we are talking about petabyte scale, right? Such kind of data sets we are talking about. So if you compare that trend with the current trend for the last 20 years that is happening, all the business transactions, scientific data like astronomy, biology, web, text and e-commerce, user logs, and then social data, IoT data, these are all contributing to the phenomenal growth of data of various nature. For example, when I say varieties, I talk about structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. That is the order of the data that we are talking about now. And the definition of data itself has undergone tremendous change. That is something that we have to take cognizance. So here, people attempted to compare this with the data flood, data deluge, data tsunami. Several metaphors were coined. Okay, but then this remains the important common denominator, or you can say common thread between AML on one hand and data science on another hand. Okay, we keep repeating this. This entire trend started in 2002 where UC Berkeley estimated that 5 exabytes of data was created in over 1 year alone, of which US was the main producer and consumer of 40% data. Unfortunately, very little data will ever be looked at by a human being. That is the problem. Therefore, people started churning out more and more sophisticated algorithms. Almost right now, if we keep saying among our community with our students and researchers, if we sleep now in the 24-hour horizon, maybe the moment we wake up in the early morning, some new algorithm would have come up. That is the pace, with which this kind of field is actually spreading. Okay, it's spreading like a wildfire, I would say. Similar kind of trend was observed somewhere about 20 years ago or 25 years ago, when people estimated that propagation algorithm, I hope all of you remember, that propagation algorithm at any point in time in 24-hour horizon of the Earth, 700 instances were running across the globe. That was the popularity of backpropagation at that time. Similar kind of thing is in the witness now, even now, okay, with respect to deep learning and other architectures. So this is a very important slide. I must tell you that this acts like a fulcrum for everything. When I was talking to somebody about data science and AML unification, somebody asked me, what is science about data science? I could only laugh at that statement. I could not say anything further. Okay, but then I said, okay, let me answer the following way. So science itself, okay, if you look at the 1600s and before, it started with experimental paradigm of science. Slowly it moved into the theoretical paradigm of science, and then they started collaborating with each other, these two paradigms. There was established a kind of symbiotic relationship. I'm talking about science in general, nothing related to data science immediately, right? The scientific pursuit started with experiments, then moved into propounding of theories, and then supporting some of the experiments with theories, so refuting experiments with theories, so on and so forth. Some theories were actually witnessed or even supported by experiments. Some were refuted by experiments. So this kind of symbiotic relationship existed till 1950. Then a third paradigm of science started in computational paradigm science. They call it computational science. That is because of the advent of computer at that time. So two predominant examples stand out here. One is in molecular modeling. Another one is aircraft, okay, wind tunnel experiment. I'll just spend 1 minute on that. When we see a new drug appearing in the market, don't think that it has come just like yesterday. The prior work would have started 10 years ago. And that is where they actually screen the molecules which are candidates for possible drugs, and then how they get binded with the disease molecules. So they're using quantum mechanical computations on the machine, right? On the machine, they try to isolate some of the important molecules. That happens at the computing level. Once those candidate molecules are identified, then only they'll be tested in the laboratory scale. Then a lot of other tests happen, like clinical trials and then pharmacological trials. Then only it sees the market. But this entire span requires 10 years, right? So that is something that we cannot ignore. Similarly, when a new aircraft is designed, whether it is passenger, civilian, or even other fighter aircraft, they don't design just like that. They create a small module, physical module of like that, physical model, and they make it run through the wind tunnel experiment. So I was fortunate to see that kind of experiment when I was 23 years old in National Aerospace Laboratory, Bangalore, right? So they showed us, and on the machine they were saying us what kind of partial differential equations are being solved. They actually describe the amount of lift and drag that this particular small model experiences, which will be equal to the kind of forces that it will be experiencing once you fly a bigger aeroplane. Okay, so such kind of things, these are two important examples. I can give many more. So computational paradigm of science is useful when you conduct some experiments in real time. When conducting of experiments becomes very difficult, in some cases it's prohibitively expensive. In such cases, you take the help of computer simulations. Then, as if that is not sufficient, the fourth paradigm of science started in terms of data-driven science or data science, or you can say big data-driven science, somewhere around 2000, when the data growth started in all the three formats, structured, semi-structured, unstructured. So now, this is totally distinct from remaining three predecessors, but then each of them is actually complementing one another. That is something that we have to appreciate. So I'm talking about science in general and scientific pursuits. The same thing is applicable even to business applications. So that is the position of data science now. It's a fourth paradigm of science. If some of you remember, there was an institute called CSR, Center for Computer Simulation and Mathematical Modeling, CMAX, they used to call in Bangalore. That is renamed as CSR 4th PI. 4th PI means 4th Paradigm Institute. Seeing the emergence, this concept is given by Professor Jim Gray in Microsoft. He has coined this word 4th paradigm of science, and it is very much valid, very much justifiable. So now there is a lot of science in data science, that is number one, and all allied sciences also require data science. You see that kind of, because of the huge generation of data. Now this is a very important slide where the data growth contains expands at an exponential pace. On the x-axis you have got timeline and y-axis the data size, but the data utilization hardly goes at a linear pace. Now important question is, how do you bridge this yanning gap between the two? That question is answered in two ways. First and foremost, you should have sophisticated algorithms. Fortunately, we are having sophisticated algorithms almost on a fortnightly basis, if not weekly basis, coming from all over the world. Second important requirement is qualified and trained manpower. See, all said and done, these models cannot run autonomously on their own. You have to have somebody to create those models, deploy them, monitor them, so on and so forth. Therefore, qualified and trained manpower, I underline again, this is a highly specialized job. Anybody and everybody cannot do this. Therefore, there is a lot of glut of these degrees that you are seeing right now. BTech in AML, BTech in predictive analytics, Master's in business analytics. Why do you think these things have started 5-10 years ago? It is because of this resource crunch. So on one hand, you should have trained manpower, qualified manpower. On the other hand, you should have sophisticated algorithms. Only when you have both, this gap can be bridged very quickly and very easily. Now we come to the definition of data mining. Okay, many of us know this. It is a non-trivial process of extracting useful, non-obvious, and actionable knowledge from huge masses of data. All the keywords are very important in order to call a process to be a data mining process, right? But then it is not a new discipline. It's a consortium of statistics, operations research, databases, and machine learning, new AI. The deep learning we are calling it as new AI. Okay, the old AI is different, as all of you know, case-based reasoning and all that. We actually forgot expert systems. We forgot all that. They are not relevant anymore because they didn't have sound mathematical basis. So they were replaced by fuzzy expert systems, neuro-fuzzy expert systems, so on and so forth. You understand all that. But the concept called expert system still remains the same, something like decision support system. But then the constituents that go into it have changed dramatically. So this is the kind of consortium we are talking about when we define data mining. So one level of unification already happened. That is, these disciplines may not be talking to eye to each other. They started collaborating, competing, and cooperating thanks to the emergence of new discipline called data mining. It is a new umbrella created. This umbrella took under it all these four disciplines, and researchers, academics started collaborating with each other. What is the purpose? Purpose is to come out with more and more better and better algorithms, more and more potent algorithms to solve the problem at hand. You understand the point? But then the radius of this umbrella keeps on increasing, as you will see now. You would have heard the word analytics. Yes, analytics itself has got three different flavors: descriptive, predictive, prescriptive. Whatever analysis people used to call 25 years ago, that became now descriptive analytics. Why so? Because we want to describe what is known already in the data in the form of pictorial diagrams. So this is where you have subjects like descriptive statistics, OLAP, online analytical processing, which these vendors call them as BI tools, business intelligence tools. They are one and the same. They use one language and we academicians use another language. Okay, you know that very well. So simple example is loans distributed region-wise, year-wise, quarter-wise, customer type-wise, etc., etc. It's a multi-dimensional query. You cannot be using simple descriptive statistics to depict this picture. You require OLAP for that. Fine. So here you are telling me what is already the data in the form of pictures, but then things do not stop there. You have to go one step further into predicting something. What is the probability of an event to happen, both in science as well as in business? For example, predicting future NPAs. NPA means non-performing assets. Somebody takes the loan, doesn't pay, and then goes to London. Or maybe some other place. So predicting what is going to happen in the future. That is where you require subjects like data mining, text mining, and web mining. So our statistics and our data mining now became a subset of analytics here in the form of predictive analytics. Could you see this? The third flavor starts with our following argument. In descriptive analytics, you are telling me what I know already, but in the form of a pictorial diagram. Okay, without that, I cannot be figuring out what is happening. But in predictive analytics, you are going to tell me what is going to happen in future. It may be one day down the line, 6 months down the line, 1 quarter down the line, doesn't really matter. Having said this, you are not telling me what I should do. That question is answered in prescriptive analytics. Basically, it gives scientific and business insights as to what you should do if that event is going to happen. So here, optimization techniques and the reinforcement learning techniques are coming into play. You understand the point? So now we have 3 different flavors of analytics. The radius of the umbrella got bigger. We started with one small umbrella, data mining, that became embedded here in predictive analytics over here. Because of the textual source that came into being, then it became text mining. Web data, again, having a multitude of varieties, it became web mining. But then entire thing is encapsulated under a bigger umbrella called analytics. Do you agree? Yes, no? Now we go one step further. What are the tasks in data mining? Let us take a quick look at that. I will not be explaining all that because all of you will be knowing this. You may be teaching this also. Association rule mining, frequently finding which items frequently go together in a data set. It is a very important task, for both the scientific purposes, cyber security purposes, as well as business purposes, even for fraud detection for that matter. Classification, categorizing observations into predetermined classes. Right? For example, classifying a customer into creditworthy and non-creditworthy customers before you grant the loan. And then the third one is clustering, grouping similar observations into same cluster. The fundamental difference between classification and clustering, many students get also confused here, is that in classification you have got labeled data, in clustering you don't have labeled data. We call this as unlabeled data. So because with the absence of the target variable or the response variable, how do you find knowledge from such kind of data is the question asked. And that question is answered affirmatively by figuring out naturally occurring groups in the data. These groups are given a name called clusters in the statistical parlance. That's the point. So what is the beauty about these clusters? Within the group, within the cluster, all the elements of the you can say customers or the people or observations, they are similar to one another. But across 2 groups, they are totally dissimilar. So here what we are trying to tell you is within group similarity and across group similarity. Within group similarity should be minimized. Across group similarity should be maximized. It's a multi-objective optimization problem. But then using K-means algorithm, we do it in a kind of hierarchical way. We take one, fix one, and then solve the other one. So that kind of thing happens in clustering. It has got immense potential, not only in business, even in medical. It's very much relevant to this particular session. Medical images. Okay, there is a world guru, I would say, Tim Bestek of fuzzy images. He was the person who actually developed and I had a fruitful interaction with him in 1998 itself when I was in Germany. So I asked him, how did you apply this in medical domain? He gave me a very interesting answer. He was dealing with some hospital and I did an oncology experiment where he was given a lot of radiological images, MRIs, etc. of the brain. How to detect a tumor from a non-tumor? How do you classify? So using K-means algorithm, he is able to do that. And that was proved to be very helpful for the radiologists as well as the clinicians. That was the first application. But later on, a lot of applications of clustering came into being. For example, how to detect an oil spill in a remote Pacific Ocean or Atlantic Ocean. Do you mean to say that people are actually visiting the place and doing? No. They are taking again satellite imageries. Based on that, they are predicting, okay, this much of oil spill is there. And its shape, so on and so forth. And land use, again, remote sensing applications. So in all these places, clustering is playing a very immense role. And of course, forecasting regression is the easiest thing to kind of explain and understand. Creating the numerical dependent variable with the help of several exploratory variables. For example, I want to predict the stock of Infosys, let's say, tomorrow. What approach do I adopt? First approach could be identifying what are all the factors, or you can say variables which contribute to the stock market. That is one approach. taking them as explanatory variables x1, x2, xn, and treat the y value. But there is a temporal component here, which you cannot ignore. Temporal component means the time aspect, which means today's stock price would have been influenced by the stock price of yesterday, day before yesterday for the same company. So then time series techniques come into play. So either you can take time series approach, or you can take the regression approach. In both the cases, you are able to predict what is going to happen for the stock price. Same is the case with gold price, crude oil price. Now crude oil is actually going up, and that's the reason our petrol and diesel prices have gone up. Even that has impacted our vegetable oils, the cooking oils. Okay. The final one is outlet detection. Outlet detection is which means an outlier is atypical observation. So typical means the most common. Atypical means uncommon. Observation that lies in abnormal distance from the other values. These are also useful as a precursor for full-scale fraud detection exercise. So primarily data mining has got these 5 different tasks. Why am I talking about this? Irrespective of the source of the data, whether it's textual, that is semi-structured, structured, unstructured, these tasks fortunately remain the same. And that is another clue coming from unifying your data science with AML. You understand the point? So now we go further. With respect to clustering, you see, just look at the replete palette of algorithms. We have K-means algorithm, K-medoids, DB-scan, fuzzy C-means, self-organizing feature map coming from neural network, evolving clustering method. One of my friends from New Zealand, Professor Subba, has propounded this. And then evolution computation based. Several researchers worked on that. We also contributed here. Researchers from IISc, Calcutta, and many other schools have also contributed. What I want to tell you is that just to address the task of clustering, several different approaches are there, and these approaches are coming from different families: statistics family, machine learning family, evolution computing family, so on and so forth. Then you have got forecasting. It is a much richer palette, we mentioned all these things, but I will not repeat again. So for forecasting, you can have several kinds of approaches, techniques coming from various families of techniques again. Talking about classification, same thing. These are all well known to us: logistic regression, naive Bayes, neural networks, support vector machines, so on and so forth. So all these are again coming from different families. So now, why I'm trying to project these things is association rule mining is not yet so much crowded. For example, you only have a priori algorithm, a growth algorithm, and this is one area we have contributed very heavily. You take the help of PSO, particle swarm optimization, to generate association rules. And there are several approaches again. So these are primarily 3 schools here which are generating association rules. Compared to previous tasks, this is not yet crowded. It means there is a lot of research potential, let me tell you. Okay, for young researchers sitting here, there is a lot of potential here. Recently, we contributed 2 papers: high utility item mining. Again, we applied a very computing method with our PhD student. So 2 such methods we did: mining of the item sets, frequent item sets, as well as mining of the frequent item rules also. Both appeared in expert systems. Sorry, appeared in expert systems applications. Another one is engineering applications of AI. Okay, these you can verify from my Google Scholar. If somebody is interested, I can supply those papers. The primary task in outlet detection is again, see, you got probability distribution based. All of us know Gaussian distribution, right? U plus or minus 3 sigma limits. Anything falls outside, it is potentially an outlier if the underlying variable is following minimum the normal distribution. That is for one variable, because 99.95% of the observations fall within plus or minus U plus or minus sigma limits, 3 sigma limits. But then if anything falls outside, it has got a very small probability. Therefore, any observation falling on the left side or right side of this curve, beyond mu plus or minus 3 sigma limits, is potentially an outlier or potentially a fraudulent transaction. Please remember this. You will immediately ask a question: what if the variable is not Gaussian? Which is the kind of scenario in the normal case, in practical situation. Then we take the help of Chebyshev inequality. Chebyshev inequality says between mu minus 3 sigma and mu plus 3 sigma, 89% of observations fall for non-Gaussian. Which means there is 11% probability that your outliers will lie outside these limits. So for Chebyshev, we have one limit. For non-Gaussian, for Gaussian, we have the standard thing anyway. So in both the cases, we are able to identify and red flag some potentially outlying observations they may become fraudulent transactions. We cannot conclusively say this. I will revisit this topic later. So, and there could be auto associated network. People are nowadays calling it auto encoders, one class SVM, evolutionary computation based, SVDD. SVDD stands for support vector data description. Okay, so unlike normal support vector machine, it creates an envelope with respect to one majority class. Any observation falling outside that is treated as an outlier or an anomalous observation. So what I want to tell you is that there are different ways of detecting an outlier from again various families of techniques. So now this is another way of looking at the unification. We looked at five different tasks of data mining. For each of them, there is a competition or collaboration with the techniques coming from both the families. This is one another kind of glue that is binding them together. Now look at this statistical learning. Statistical learning is now the important underpinning for many of the deep learning architectures. For example, your RBM, okay, restricted Boltzmann machine, and a bigger cousin of that, deep belief network, essentially uses gift sampling and then Monte Carlo, Markosian Monte Carlo, MC techniques. So they are actually at the contrast to divergence. They are taking from statistical learning only, nothing else. So increasingly they are coming together. You cannot separate them out. It is much much quicker than your Fevicol, I would say. Okay. So then if somebody tries to draw a line between data science and AML, I would say I'll just only laugh at such people and say that you're drawing boundaries in the water. It is meaningless. You cannot do that, okay? They are given two different names, but at these many levels, psychological levels, epistemological levels, they are more than you can say technical levels, they are all one and the same. And then go further. Feature selection again. I am sure all of you know feature selection. Again, multitude of techniques are coming from both the families. Now, this is the final thing. What we are trying to tell you is that data science and AML are bounded by your data on one hand. Without data, both the algorithms cannot work, both the families. Without models, both are non-existent. Without compute is very important, cannot happen. And then they are able to solve business problems and scientific problems. So these are the four pillars of glues, I would say, which bind them together. And this is the unification I'm talking about. Having said this, now look at the biggest umbrella that we can think of. We started with small umbrella, unfortunately they're same size, please excuse me. But then, okay, because that fellow did not draw properly. So this is a small umbrella we started with. Then umbrella got bigger, radius got the biggest as we speak now. We do not know what happens 5 years, 10 years later. Some other new word may come. But this edifies what we built still holds good. Okay, so now analytics became a small subset of the data science in the form of social media analytics, big data analytics, and your deep learning is occupying a big space here. If you have any questions, clarification, please ask me. This is a logical break. Now we get into deep learning. Don't hesitate. And at the end of the day, if I demystify these concepts and are confused about the jargon, I'll be happy. Rather, I should not confuse you further. With these diagrams. Yes, please. You want a short answer or long answer? Long answer requires a 2-hour session. Short answer. Okay, so evolution computation means basically that is the new line of research. You know, that basically you have heard about genetic algorithms. Genetic algorithms are algorithms where they perform steps in optimization and they compete with the traditional algorithms like calculus-based algorithms for optimizing certain functions. But the important thing is these calculus-based algorithms cannot work if the underlying objective function is not differentiable. Right? And if the decision space is non-convex. In such cases, these evolutionary algorithms play a big role and they try to give you, in most cases, global optimal solution. If not, if they fail to give, then they try to give a cluster of solutions around the global optimum, which you would not know. So that's the promise they hold. And as we speak now, there are close to about 100 different varieties of evolutionary algorithms coming from both swarm family as well as genetics family. That is just a high level kind of answer. Second thing is the kind of challenge that we took upon ourselves is we took a kind of assertion Listen to me carefully. Whatever machine learning algorithms can achieve, we can achieve the same thing through evolution algorithm. And we are proved right. Just yesterday only we got one paper accepted from Swarm and Evolution Computation that talks about prediction of the prediction intervals. All of you would have confidence intervals. So if you make a prediction about stock market, let us say, I give you a simple example. Stock price of, let us say, TCS or whatever. I do not know the exact prices. Don't fault with me. Maybe it is 100.5 rupees. Let us say I come up with a prediction of 100.6. I am making a fine prediction. As opposed to that, if I make a prediction saying that, okay, it will have a variation between 100.4 and 100.7, then I'm giving you prediction intervals, both the lower bound and upper bound. So such kind of things is actually a new field that is emerged now, where a lot of machine learning algorithms have been applied, including neural networks, LSTM, deep learning architectures, various other things. Then we challenge ourselves, and I challenge my MTech students saying that, no, I think we have to develop an evolution algorithm over here, independent of machine learning algorithms. And we are successful in that. And that paper, after 3 rigorous reviews in the COVID, let me tell you, when the student himself got COVID, okay, he's working in TCS, but then, work from home and all these things, it happened, he started going to work in his place, somewhere in Krishna district. But then we did work for 2 years, we struggled, we got the paper accepted yesterday. It was a kind of sweet experience. So that is one. Classification models. How to solve a classification problem with theoretical algorithms and PSO, etc. We did that. Association rule mining. Primarily, all the 5 different classes of data mining, we were able to solve them with the help of these kind of algorithms. And all of them are published now. Except one, outlier detection, I'm not happy. PhD student has done some work, but still I have got some ideas now. So it's a new school of thought that we started actually. And we are getting a state-of-the-art performance with these things. And more importantly, give you if-then rules. If-then rules are very important in the current age because people are nowadays talking about explainable AI. I'm sure you would have heard this buzzword. I want to talk about that at the end of the talk. Explainable AI means you are giving me decisions from your AI ML model, but why are you not able to explain what is happening inside the model? It's a black box, which means you should be in a position to identify these variables have got this much importance levels, number one. Number two, this knowledge is learned by the ML models, but this knowledge is not explainable to the human being in the way he or she can explain or understand. That is where if-then rules come in very handy. By design, these algorithms come with if-then rules, by design, while solving the problem. So we are targeting both interpretability as well as explainability. So this is a bit long answer, but it requires a 2-3 hour session. Maybe you should invite me later. Okay, is this clear? Is this clear? Or some more confusion is planted by me? I want a demystification, because as far as research activities is concerned, I could see fantastic publications already coming up with this. So you should have this clarity as to where we are and what we are doing. And they are not 2 different words, let me tell you. Okay, they're all one and the same. And if somebody tries to still differentiate, please tell him you are drawing boundaries in the water. Fine, we go ahead. So these are the applications of data science. All the fields are, no field is unimpacted, I would say. Okay. The other day I was talking to CBDT officials, Central Board of Direct Taxes. It is really scary, let me tell you. You can never escape tax in India thereafter. The kind of systems that they are putting in place, you talk of any of these techniques, even better techniques are there already in the place. So first hand, I got the information. This is what is happening currently as we speak in CBDT Delhi. And then more than 20 data scientists are working. They are highly qualified from IITs, etc. Okay, fine. And then these are other applications: insurance, manufacturing, retail, telecom. Many of them are service industries. Okay. So talking about the software tools, we have tools both in the commercial space as well as open source. My students have thoroughly explained my open source this one and Rapid Miner, okay, and then Vega to a large extent, and other open source tools also there. And nowadays the rage is for R and Python. Yes, tools are also working on that. But if you want low code and no code, I would suggest you to go for 9 Rapid Miner and Vega. You don't have to code anything. But then I'm just telling the students, I'm repeating the words of an IIT professor whom I cannot name, but this is very much relevant. Okay, these are not my words. Okay, these slightly provocative. He said, a fool with a fool is still a fool. It is quite very nicely, kind of alliteration they call it in English, but unfortunately that is true with many of the young students. They take from data set, apply on a tool, sir, you got the result, madam, and whatever you wanted, I'm showing you. No, we want to know what is happening, the science behind it, the algorithm behind it. You explain to me on the PPT or board. Then only we'll actually understand and get the hang of it. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. Understand? So tools are there. So whenever my students talk about R and Python, I say no. I want to talk about data science and AML, not R and Python. These are only tools. Tomorrow Julia may come. Ruby is getting established. Ruby may come. So no, we are not worried about that. When we learned Python, Fortran, C++. We came from that generation. You understand? So these things come and go. Programming languages. You better concentrate on the concepts. That these are very important. Okay. So then this is a whole list, open source tools. I'm giving these things here. So now we are getting into so-called deep learning, taking a deep dive. So here I must tell you, there are 4 different generations of neural networks. You may be wondering why this very started with neural networks. Deep learning. The reason is entire deep learning is replete with only neural networks, nothing else, whether you like it or hate it. Some people, if they don't like neural networks, then don't go into deep learning. But if there is a compulsion to go, then start loving neural networks, not liking, start loving them. Therefore, there are 4 different generations of neural networks. First generation started with simple perceptron, single layer perceptron, we used to call it. 1943 started. But then in 1969, it met with the first winter of AI, they call it. They could not solve a simple problem of XOR. Minsky and Papert criticized heavily these kind of researchers. So much so, what happened as a ramification, all the departments world over stopped working on neural networks. Funding stopped, departments closed, professors changed the tack, conferences stopped. Many things happened. This negative trend continued till 17 years, till 1986, until your Hinton came to the scene and he gave back propagation with Reuben Hartman and Williams. That changed the scene forever because he gave solid mathematical evidence, and then they gave a very general architecture associated algorithm called very popular back propagation algorithm. It has its own deficiencies. We know firsthand because we proposed the counter arguments and counter algorithms for that from the evolution standpoint. Okay, we generated neural network architecture, totally replaced back propagation by evolution computing methods. Our papers are there to be seen. What I want to tell you is different thing. So that this trend continued and several associated architectures came into being in the form of multi-layer perceptron, radial-based function network, probabilistic network, general regression neural network, GMDH. Many people are unaware that Hinton is created with the first deep learning architecture. That is not true. Whether we like Russia or not, currently, it is a Russian mathematician who gave GMDH, proof method of data handling, Professor Ivaknenko in 1965, 56 years ago. But he did not coin the word deep learning at that time. That is the first acknowledged architecture of deep learning. If you talk about dropout, he used the dropout at that time without calling it dropout. Mini batch was not there, SGD was not there, forget that. But then he had all the elements, it was working very well. We exploited this thoroughly in our research projects. Then leverage neural network, self-organizing feature map, pretty small component neural network. This is another great theory, adaptive resonance theory from Grasberg and Carpenter. These are the second generation of neural networks. The third generation started in the first generation, you wanted to bring it very close to human brain. You could not do. Second generation, you made moderate progress, but then again, it is nowhere near to the brain. The third generation started with actually influencing electrochemical stimuli in the form of taking principles from physics and thermodynamics, and that is where spiking neural networks came into being. That's the third generation. So it has its popularity even now. So certain section of people, die-hard people use it. We belong to that section. There is a fourth variety or fourth generation that talks about only deep learning architectures, which is deep learning neural networks. When you say deep, there is a kind of elasticity introduced into the layers of the architecture, layers of the architecture of the neural network. Several kind of tasks which were done manually, I'm talking about image processing applications, They are all enforced and given the task to specific layers in the architecture of the neural network, something like a CNN, and there is no looking back. So we start with radial basis, sorry, not radial basis, restricted Boltzmann machine, DBN, deep belief network, CNN, convolutional neural network, recurrent neural network, autoencoder. Autoencoder is on both sides, by the way. You can develop an autoencoder from shallow learning networks also. We did that. Powered by evolutionary computational algorithm. We published some articles in that. And then LSTM, GRU, GAN, and then capsule network. So these are all the kind of families of architectures coming from deep learning family. And this has got a lot of applications. And mind-boggling applications, let me tell you. But that is also making the entire AI red, as I mentioned in the speech. So this is the first thing, and then we make a head-to-head comparison. We need to know this before we go ahead, okay? Where do we stand with respect to shallow learning vis-a-vis deep learning? For example, in shallow learning neural networks, architecture is very simple, whereas it's a complex architecture. You need to actually, first reading you will not be able to understand, let me tell you. And it is shallow in nature, which means only one layer at the most, or two layers will be there. But deep here meaning having many hidden layers. Not working. Or maybe resolution. Fine. Feature engineering is a must here, which means you have to do the feature extraction and feature selection manually. That is the meaning of feature engineering. Whereas here, it is part of the training process itself. And highly accurate if the features are informative and discriminative. This is a very loaded statement. I ask the attention of all of you. The question. And here, highly accurate if features are ill-defined and imposed. This is a very, and now let me spend 1 minute on this. In 2018, rather 5 of our papers were accepted in the Institute of Acceleration Conference in Berkeley, California. We visited there. This application I'm talking about is with respect to sentiment analysis. So we took the sentiment analysis data from Amazon reviews and the Yelp reviews. The number of dimensions became 5 lakhs. That is the problem. Then we advised the student to actually switch over to personal computing, Hadoop and all. We did that. Hadoop framework. Eventually, we got rather not so bad, not so good results for deep learning architectures vis-a-vis SVM and MLP. My student came to me with a very sad face. I said, what happened? The deep learning did not give good results, sir. Then I asked a simple question. Are you the originator of deep learning? He said, no, sir. You said this. Then why are you so much fascinated by deep learning? We are all scientists. Whatever we get results, we have to report objectively. Don't take any sides. If deep learning is not the winner, so be it. Why are you worried? No, sir, I expect deep learning to be winner. I said, why? Because everybody in the world is talking about it. So here comes a slew of examples where deep learning miserably fails, and there are reasons. This is something that may not be palatable to some of you sitting here, but this is what we experienced firsthand. Let me tell you. Therefore, this question was asked in the conference. The professor from Canada, he asked me this question. I was presenting 5. See, on one hand, you may get happy, right? That 5 papers not accepted at the IEEE conference, prestigious one. But then when it comes to money, we had to shell down $450 for each paper. They are so stingy, you know. These people did not even give a one discount for one of the papers also. We pulled the funds from somewhere, 450 into 5, just calculate. That much, close to $2,500 we paid only for registration fees. Keep that aside. Big people came to the conference. They asked me this question. Still, throughout the journey, I was thinking, what kind this? I know that this question will pop up. What kind of question should come? Thankfully, at that instance of time, God helped me, and we got this answer. Shallow learning architectures are very good if the underlying features are highly informative and discriminative. They even outperform your deep learning architectures. The kind of data that we took, it so happened that the features are having total information. They are able to discriminate between 2 classes, positive sentiment versus negative sentiment. That did not happen with deep learning algorithms. They are not ill-posed, ill-defined. Therefore, deep learning architectures in that particular case miserably failed. This trend we have seen in image processing applications also. Same logic is given, same justification. So this is something that I want to make you aware that never ever expect just because it's a new buzzword, it's going to be the winner every time. No, that makes entire machine learning or data science very interesting and fun. If you are able to predict before conducting the project that this technique is going to be the winner, where is the fun? There is no fun. That element of suspense should trigger a lot of curiosity in the researcher. If everything is written on the wall, then let us stop research. You understand the point? That is the beauty of research, you know. Feature selection with Gaussian algorithm and all these things are possible in MLP, whereas feature selection is not embedded in deep learning architectures. That is the reason people are nowadays talking about explainable AI. If we talk about explainable AI, I produced 2 PhD theses in 2007, 2011. One with respect to MLP and other architectures, other with respect to SVM. That second one went to IISc professor who praised the thesis like anything. It's a fantastic work you have done, Professor Ravi, like that he said. Very interesting accolade we got from that professor. He is a big professor, I cannot name him. So important thing here is, with respect to shallow learning architectures, explainable AI was already there. But in the context of deep learning, explainable AI is still emerging. That is something that, so it's a kind of virgin area even now, even though many people are working world over. So those are other areas we can concentrate, researchers sitting here, right? Yeah, feature selection, GRNN, PNN, GMDH, these are all embedded, you know, within the algorithm. Because while the training process is happening, important variables are picked up. That is not the case in deep learning as it stands. And some are universal approximators. This is a very important property. Universal approximator means you can approximate any nonlinear function to arbitrary degree of accuracy. Very loaded statement. You can give any kind of nonlinear function of any degree, does not really matter. You specify the error or tolerance, I will achieve that. Or you can say approximation. So what you want to say is that you may say 10 power minus 6, I want to achieve, I can achieve that. He says, no, 10 power minus 20 in my application, I can achieve that. So any method satisfying this kind of property is called universal approximator. And out of all the families of neural networks, only 2 satisfy this. One is MLP and the one is RBF, linear basis function neural network. No other neural network has this beautiful property. And never your deep learning architectures, they don't have this kind of property. Unfortunately, all your shallow learning neural networks are black boxes. Can somebody tell me what is black box? Because there is a misnomer. That is the reason I asked this question. People do not understand black box. That is the reason I asked this question. Anybody from audience? Any 1 or 2 answers. What is a black box in your opinion? Okay. Okay. Yeah, any other point? Thank you. Any other pointer? No, let me paraphrase the question. In a black box, what do we know, what we do not know? Now we get to find the answers. Entire process is not clear. Are you sure? Not really, madam. I tell you why. We are the people who are designing the architecture. We are the people who are supplying the data. We are the people who are giving the algorithm, training the algorithm and coding it. That means we do everything internal of the algorithm, of the architecture of the neural network. There is something else that we do not know. I expect somebody to tell that. Everything is under our control. It's our baby, except something. What is the something? Output, yes, we are able to control the output, you know, by changing different algorithms. That propagation, if you see, there are learning rate, momentum rate, number of hidden nodes. If you tweak them properly, you get different outputs. So it is under our control. That's not the answer. We can do, madam, grid search. We can do grid search. We can get different. You tell me millions of combinations. I can reel out and give you. Still, that is not the answer. Okay. Still, that is an abstract answer, but that's the correct answer. To put it more concrete terms, maybe layman terms, I would say, we have to just immediately go back to data mining definition. No, it is clear, sir. Everything is clear. We are only controlling. Now I am giving the answer. We have to immediately go back to our definition of data mining. What did we say? We have to extract knowledge from the data. We are not able to get that here. Whatever you do, you are getting stupendous accuracies. Medical community objected to this. Let me tell you, every other community they were feeling very happy. 1988, Stephen Gallant wrote this paper. Medical community, there is a journal called AI in Medicine. All of them refuted. We don't want your back propagation. Entire world let them celebrate, but we don't accept it. Then Stephen Gallant's contribution came. So what he said, using the weights, lot of knowledge is stored in the weights, which nobody except God knows what it is. Unless and until you extricate that knowledge from the weights. The slew of algorithms came from that, to address that. Several researchers are there. In fact, we also contribute to that. That is one PhD thesis I was talking about. So what I want to tell is that the knowledge learned by the neural network during training is not transparent. Therefore, we got black box. Okay? Everything else is under our control. Let us be very clear about it. But then, same is the case here. In deep learning also same thing happens. Nobody knows. Therefore, explainable AI is becoming a very rage now. Okay? And then it is less expensive, of course. Okay, there it is more expensive. You need more data, and you have to even nowadays people are running on clusters of GPU machines, not just horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. People are combining them, working on hybrids of things, which means you have got a cluster of machines, and each machine is having multiple GPUs. That's called hybrid horizontal and vertical scaling. People are working on that. Still, they are not able to solve, and increasing only the carbon footprint. Okay, and finally, needs less data. That's what I said. So these are the head-to-head comparison between machine learning, or you can say shallow learning networks versus deep learning architectures. Is this clear? Then we go ahead. So these one survey paper we wrote in 2020. Very interesting things happen, when we visit conferences. We do not know how collaboration comes from anywhere. It's something like visiting a marriage and then suddenly for your boy or girl some match comes up. I'm giving an analogy which is very relevant. Okay, so this same thing happened. So I visited this SSA conference where I presented one or two papers. Then suddenly we were staying in the same hotel. I bumped up this upon this guy, We are sitting opposite each other at the dinner table. Simply chatting this way, that way, then that's all. The conversation got over. The next day he was also there, I was also there. Then again we talked about his paper. He was working, presenting some paper on chaos. Chaos is close to my heart. We also work a lot of things working chaos. Then also nothing happened. After the conference, he started a conversation with me. Professor, why don't we just write a kind of paper together? I said, what is the topic? Then he said, we'll write a review paper. I said, fine. Then he assembled together all the things, 4 different countries, 7 different people, 3 different continents. Except him, I did not know anybody. So we wrote this survey paper. Now it is actually having excellent citations already, 155, last 155. That's published in 2020. And prestigious journal, Impact Factor. I strongly urge all of you to look into this, where we talked about various things. Okay, it's different from other survey papers. We talked about 8 different domains where deep learning is playing an important role. Number 1, we gave a lot of data sets and then software tools, and we discussed approaches also. It's a very well written paper. So now we start with convolutional neural networks. So CNNs were any question till this point in time? Okay, CNNs were neurobiologically motivated by the findings of locally sensitive, orientation selective nerve cells in the visual cortex. They designed a network structure that implicitly extracts relevant features. Convolutional neural networks are special kind of multi-layer networks. So here, convolution has got the important connotation and meaning in signal processing. Okay, so when you define convolution, you actually take the help of an integral to do that. But then people are wondering how to use that kind of convolution in the neural network architecture where you deal with discrete data. So obviously, the integral cannot be substituted by any summation symbol here, but then very clever tricks are employed here to bring in an analog of, I would say, convolution operation. So CNN is a feed-forward neural network that can extract topological properties from an image. Like almost every other neural network, they are also trained with a version of the backpropagation algorithm. So that is something that you cannot ignore. Throughout the literature of deep learning architectures, they call it workhorse. Well, I don't call it so much. The backpropagation has been heavily relied on, and variants of that. Okay. They come up with algorithms like Adam and all other things. Okay, 10 different variations are there. I have only one question to them. You know very well that backpropagation algorithm has got a kind of demerits, disadvantages, that it entraps in local minima. Number one, it is pretty slow. Number two, it requires a lot of data. Number three. Number four, it doesn't work on non-convex spaces. How do you deal with this? So people have, it seems they found out some workaround for this, and they're continuing with this. But then, right now, as we speak, there is a kind of close intertwining between evolutionary computation and then deep learning architectures. That field is called neuroevolution. That is the latest stage now. So people like Professor Kalyan Maite, one of my favorite collaborators, and then Professor Yusun Hong from NTU Singapore, and then T. Nicleonel from TU Austin. These three are the prominent guys who are contributing to neuroevolution. What this means is, I have got a bunch of, let us say, CNN architectures. How do you determine which is optimal architecture for my problem? So it's called structure optimization, not parameter optimization. I will figure out how many number of convolution layers should be there. This algorithm will figure out how many convolution layers should be there, how many pooling layers should be there, what should be the kind of kernel size. Everything will be determined by the evolutionary algorithm, and therefore it takes time. But then at the end of the day, it reduces a lot of human drudgery. You don't have to do it manually. The algorithm does it. It also increases carbon footprint. Let me keep saying that. Okay, GPT-3 actually runs on some evolutionary algorithm, and therefore carbon footprint is increased. Anyway, so that is something I want to tell you. So backpropagation, I am reminded of that immediately. Convolution neural networks are designed to recognize visual patterns directly from pixel images with the minimal pre-processing, and they can recognize patterns with extreme variability. So the important, you can say, contribution or positive contribution or negative contribution, we call it. Positive contribution is that CNN has been able to solve extremely complex problems which were unsolved at that point in time, or maybe sometimes not so easily solvable. That is one positive contribution. Negative contribution is entire edifice of image processing is thrown away. You don't have to learn the image processing as you were learning 5 years ago or 10 years ago. That textbooks you can actually keep in running. Okay, you can just I will read it later, something like this. All these things are accomplished by each of the layers. You forget skeletonization, thinning, segmentation. All these things are done by different layers of CNN, and various architectures of CNN have come now. Of course, different degree of accuracy, different degree of even complexity. But then there are applied for specific problems. If I talked about ophthalmological problems in the morning, chairman sir is working. So they're actually a very important thing, you know. And we also worked on diabetic retinopathy. I think I mentioned this in the morning, it's worth repeating once more. It's a not so well-known conference, it may not be well-known as your conference, right? But I never expected that we will have at least 2-3 citations. To my surprise, it's already having 25 citations. And not just from India, from all over the world, people are citing. So that means, number one, architecture is very good. Number two, that shows the intensity of the problem. Diabetic retinopathy is not easy to detect, even for human experts. So if your deep learning architecture is able to do that well in advance and with comparable accuracy as human experts, then definitely it is worth citing. Most likely that may be the reason, most likely. The other disease is glaucoma. So in the medicine, again, 2 fields are only using these things. You are surprised. Oncology and then this one, ophthalmology. Not many other fields. So there is again a lot of research potential for you if you concentrate on that. See, when I actually did my PhD, Professor Shankar Paul, I'm sure some of you would have heard, former director of ISA Calcutta. I have close interaction with him. He said, if you want to do good work and be well cited in this field, you have to choose 2 fields, one of the two fields. I said, what, sir? First one is bioinformatics, second one is finance. If you do in either of them or both of them, then your citations will zoom like anything, you'll become a famous researcher. I said, okay. At that time, I moved to Singapore. We dabbled with some of the problems in bioinformatics. Somehow we figured out that it requires more and more of domain expertise. We didn't have so many domain experts at the time to rely upon. Therefore, after working for 1 or 2 years, then slowly I moved into finance. So for the last 20 years, we are working in financial problems, and that brought me to IDRBT. Okay. So after coming here, I found out a lot of problems are actually tailor-made for these disciplines. Similarly, now, if you say in medical field, these two are tailor-made for you. There is one professor, you'll be surprised. His name is Professor U. Rajendra Acharya. Please note it down. U. Rajendra Acharya. He is working in a Singapore Polytechnic. They call it, politics are there in India also, right? Singapore polytechnics are different, of a higher level, higher class. That became a university also recently. So this person has got huge number of citations already, because this person actually developed a lot of architectures from deep learning category for solving a lot of medical problems. Okay. In some papers, he developed 34 layers. So this brings up, see, there are important slides. Okay, I'll talk about that. These are very important theoretical underpinnings and research things I want to share with you. There is something called parsimony aspect. Parsimony means your model should be as much frugal as possible, at the same time without compromising the accuracy. Nowadays, you know the kind of trainable parameters we are looking at. 175 billion GPT-3 has got. You have idea about 1 billion. 175 billion parameters to be trained. Ridiculous amount. If you can achieve comparable accuracy with a fewer number of trainable parameters, it's a huge achievement, I would say, from the parsimony aspect. So, but people are not worried about the big companies like Google, etc. They got huge compute power. They are not worried about parsimony aspect. Therefore, green AI does not come easily. Recently, I came up with one paper in Chem Archive. You know Archive, all of you? Chem Archive is there. Okay. In Chem Archive, I came with the paper. They are using an ensemble of MLPs or traditional MLPs to replace your GPT-3 to reduce the carbon footprint. Okay. So there is a very interesting research directions that are happening. So there are some things which are very introductory about these architectures. Some of them I may skip, but the things that I don't want to skip are the case studies that we did. Okay. Finally, the decision making will lie with you, and also the time available. We have 1 more hour anyway. So CNN, first layer is convolution layer. In this layer, CNN utilizes various kernels to convolve the whole image as well as the intermediate feature maps, generating various feature maps. The advantage is that weight sharing mechanism is the same feature map, reduces the number of parameters, etc. Just look at this. Okay. So you have got different types of poolings are there. This is the next layer, pooling layer. I think it is better explained with the complete algorithm. But most important thing that what you have to do is invariance. This is something that will come back. Invariance of the location of the object. So invariance and equivariance, these are two different things. I will talk about that. Let us complete this. So there is a convolution layer, then there is a pooling layer. Yeah. And also called flattening layer. And I'm waiting for the next slide where we have complete architecture. So these are different architectures. Only some of them are listed here, but many more are there. As I told you, there is a survey paper on convolution neural network which talks about 20 different architectures as we speak today. Okay, each is having a different degree of difficulty and success. Yeah, this is the one I was talking about. So you give an input here of a car image. You go for feature learning or feature engineering. The first layer talks about convolution. Okay, and then followed by your sigmoid is totally removed. I tell you that is another important thing. You may be asking what is the genesis of deep learning. We mentioned some reasons. One important reason we forgot to mention is what is known as vanishing gradient and exploding gradient. What this means is sigmoid and the tan H, that is hyperbolic tangent, have done a fantastic job in solving, bringing the non-linearity to the architecture, etc., apart from the hidden layers. But then people discovered that as the problem becomes large, complex, when the number of hidden layers are increased, the contribution of the error becomes so small that the gradient vanishes. Once the gradient vanishes, that means it becomes zero. The contribution of the previous past layer to the error value of the prediction becomes so small. So that actually is a problem. In other case, in some cases, the gradient actually explodes, becomes very large, infinitely large. Both the extremes are experiencing some large problems. Therefore, they said they try to identify where this problem is coming from. Then they said the sigmoid is the culprit here. Sigmoid was once a hero, an angel, suddenly became a culprit now. Understand the point? Therefore, they said, no, it has got beautiful properties, it is continuously differentiable, and its derivative can be computed in closed form. All the beautiful properties are there because f dash x is nothing but fx into 1 minus fx in the case of sigmoid. But all said and done, he's causing these kind of problems when I increase the number of hidden layers. Therefore, what they said, no, I think we have to replace sigmoid with a better kind of actuation function. Then they coined the ReLU. ReLU is nothing but rectified linear unit. It is piecewise linear. It is not like having that beautiful S-shaped curve like that. So ReLU is there. They did that, and then pooling layer came. Okay, I have an example to show this. So basically, one portion of this image is taken and then goes into the next image, next layer, that's the pooling layer. Pooling, some operation happens. I got some arithmetic example to show you, and then again convolution takes place. So multiple layers of abstraction is happening here. So this is something called extracting latent variables. Please remember this. When in some cases, especially in image processing, text applications, unlike tabular data, I repeat again, unlike tabular data example is, you can say, take a bank case, for example, age, gender, marital status, education qualification, income, etc. So these are all continuous and categorical variables. We call such data as tabular data. As opposed to this, we also have different data sets now, thanks to the explosion of data in the form of unstructured data. Examples being image data sets and then textual data sets, where you don't have clear-cut, well-defined features. Now the columns, you remember the first slide, or the variables, explanatory variables. In such cases, we have to derive variables from variables from variables. So this is called different levels of abstraction, or different levels of extracting latent variables. What is the meaning of latent? Hidden. The English meaning of latent is hidden. So some variables are there, hidden in the data. We have to extract that using these operations, and each of the layer does that job. Each of the convolution layer does that job. But that once you get such kind of latent variables, you have to pull them together using the pooling operation. So essentially, if you ask me in one sentence what deep learning architectures achieve, is that they achieve they obviate the problem of vanishing gradient and exploding gradient, number one. They also suddenly give you feature extraction at a whatever level you want. You want third level of abstraction, yes, you put one more convolution layer, one more pooling layer, that kind of thing. So latent variable of any degree you can achieve depending on the problem complexity. So in one such case, I was telling you, Rajendra Acharya's case, for solving Glaucoma prediction, he used 35 layers, out of which 10 were convolution layers, 10 pooling layers. I said, what the hell of this architecture? Why did we complicate this? Anyway, that's a different ball game. We have to think about that later. After doing all this, let me tell you, still we are doing feature learning. Once we come to this, still we are doing only feature learning. These jobs were done exclusively by other image processing techniques like thinning, characterization, thinning, all those aspects, right? All those things are removed now. You don't need to learn that anymore, unfortunately. No offense meant to image processing hours here. That is the kind of, events that are happening. You have to just accept it with a pinch of salt or with a pinch of salt. We don't like our feet getting dyed. We don't like happens. That is how science progresses. Fine. So when this point comes, only the features are getting extracted. But there is a classification now. For that again, our good old workhorse is there. Back propagation is taken. So that is what we call as lateral layer, and invoke our back propagation to train that. And finally, we end up with a softmax operation is there. This is just to convert it to probabilities. And we take max a priori, that is, out of all these things, that particular image, whether it's a car or not, visually you are able to say, but the machine to say that it can become a car, truck, van, etc. Whichever class has got highest probability, accordingly that class is tick marked, which means that is output. So that is how convolution layer CNN works, and it has got various architectures again, in the plain vanilla version. So They exploit the property of spatial location. It's not working, man. Spatial location correlations in the image by enforcing local connectivity between neurons of adjacent layers. Drastically reduce the number of free parameters compared to fully connected network, reducing overfitting and more importantly computational complexity of the network. So overfitting is also answered here very affirmatively. So this example, actually animation is there here. I don't know why animation is not suppressed. Is it a PDF? It's PDF, right? Oh, all the time I was thinking that it's PPT. In the PPT, the animation comes.
The settings might get changed.
Oh God, you didn't tell me that before. Okay, so if it is a PDF, a PPT, you would have seen, I would have shown you what is a kernel and all those things. Okay, this matrix, what you are seeing 3 by 3, is the kernel, that moves from one 3 by 3 matrix to adjacent 3 by 3, another adjacent 3 by 3. Accordingly, the operations happen here. So convolution, pooling there, and then max pooling, everything happened here in the animation. That is a beautiful thing I wanted to show you. Unfortunately, PDF doesn't allow me to do that. Yes, what to do? Okay. Because visually, if we see, we get that hang of the architecture, as to what is happening. Anyway, let us be content with that. So this is the image, and then this is called one stride, to take a kernel of 3 by 3, original matrix is 5 by 5, to take a kernel of 3 by 3 matrix and move it across. Okay, sorry for using a loose language, because I cannot show you visually. So you move it across 3 by 3 like this, one slide here, another slide here, another slide here, and then next here, here like this. So that all the entries get filled. How do they get filled? Maximum. Then we take dot product of the corresponding entities, and then take a maximum of that out of 9 entries. That maximum entry will sit here. That's the convolve feature. And you do this multiple times across different regions of the original image. That is what I am talking about, abstraction at multiple layers. In other words, we are picking up latent variables from different regions which are otherwise very ill-defined and ill-posed. The moment you do this multiple times, I'm using a fuzzy word, multiple times, you end up with well-defined latent features. That is the stage where you have to stop all this convolution, kernel, or pooling operation, and then start invoke our workhorse, that is backpropagation, for classification or regression problems. This is how CNN works. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. These things again. See, so in this particular slide, if you take 8 is the maximum, so 8 will come here. In this, 12 is the maximum, 12 will come here. In this segment, 46 is the maximum, 46 will come here. And in this segment, 100 is the maximum, this will come here. So like this we are doing, okay? That is max pooling operation. Pooling can be done in multiple ways. Most often used pooling operation is max pooling operation, okay? And then normalization, regularization, all these things. So dropout. So dropout is another important feature introduced by Hinton when he designed RBM architecture and then deep rich network architecture. What he said is, whichever neuron in the hidden layers is not contributing to the problem, they can be dropped, and the corresponding corrections can be dropped immediately. Right? So this feature, as I told you already, was present in the GMDH architecture, but then without that fancy name like dropout, this actually reduced the computational burden on the architecture. This was something unheard of in the third generation of neural networks. Even though some neurons were not contributing to the problem, as a legacy, we are still continuing, and then that did not actually increase the computational simplicity, right? But then, this CNN internet introduced the dropout, thereby reducing the computational complexity. That is number one. Then he also said stochastic gradient descent. You don't have to give all the training samples for the computing the gradient and then perform the stochastic descent, steepest descent. That is a traditional thinking coming from optimization theory. You don't have to do that. He said you can give a batch of that, and then using that batch, you can compute the derivative and gradients. But then this batch changes randomly in every iteration. Because it changes randomly, they call it stochastic gradient descent. The stochastic aspect comes from that aspect. In every iteration, which batch comes, you do not know, but batch size is fixed. That is called mini batch. Number of samples coming is fixed, which is called mini batch by the user. User can change it as a parameter. But then, which 20, let us say mini batch size is 20, which 20 will come from 1000 samples is unknown. It is dictated by the random number. Therefore, it's called stochastic descent. But geometrically, if you see, stochastic descent, gradient descent versus gradient descent, stochastic gradient descent is slower. But then it achieves the purpose of coming nearer the global optimum compared to the normal gradient descent. That is the reason many of these architectures are powered by HCD algorithm. And now it's a different point altogether that people already developed a parallel stochastic gradient descent. We also did in one of our MTech projects with respect to a neural network architecture that we are going to actually communicate to a journal. Okay, so stochastic descent is the kind of the important thing here. And then here softmax, I told you, just to normalize the probabilities and get the final probabilities, whichever is the maximum, correspondingly, the class will be outputted as the final class for inferencing. Inferencing means, okay, they use another word, they again use the jargon, I don't like. The deep learning community, suddenly they say training when they inference. When we talked about shallow learning, they use the training and testing. Why don't you continue the same language? Why do you confuse the audience? Because just as mathematical notation pisses off, many readers and beginners, jargon also puts away a lot of people. Inference here is nothing but testing phase. Just to understand this, you may have to spend 1 week, unfortunately. So you should not complicate the science, You have to attract more and more people into your fold rather than keeping people away from you. That's not the intention of a scientist, right? Unfortunately, that is being done. Let us not worry about that. So these are all disadvantages also. Most important disadvantage here is the following, which is called invariance. Let us suppose that we are doing a face recognition. CNN recognizes eyes to be eyes, nose to be nose, ear to be ears, mouth to be mouth. Unfortunately, what it does not do is that where to place. Placement it does not know. This aspect was again found by Hinton in 2017. Number one. Number two, CNN requires huge amount of data to train. Because of these two reasons, he said, I am developing a new architecture which requires less number of samples in the first place. Secondly, it achieves what is known as not invariance, but equivariance. Which means, for example, our nose can be tilted here if you give it a CNN. He developed a capsule neural network. That's the latest thing in the deep learning architectures, again given by Hinton. It achieves equivariance. And he for that he changed the entire architecture, entire operations, the what is it called? Squashing operation he has introduced for activation. It's a new thing he has coined. That means nose will be at the place of nose only. Otherwise, what happened? Nose will be here, mouth will be here. That kind of thing happened, Inconsistencies happened when he applied CNN alone. He achieved this with the capsule network. Recently, last year, we published one paper with bidirectional PG capsule, bidirectional GRU together with capsule network for text classification. It got published in SMCS, Springer Nature Computer Science. Okay. That other kind of things, that backpropagation is very unfriendly, it is memory intensive. These are other things. Of course, it has got a myriad of applications, I would say. Sentiment analysis, topic characterization, POS tagging, entity extraction, relation extraction, so many things you can do with CNN. Okay. Now we talk about, logical break. Any question? Obviously, we're not going to the mathematics. That is not the intent here. Otherwise, I should be here for 5 more hours. 2 hours is not sufficient. We know deliberately that we are actually scratching the surface to the extent that is reasonable required to understand the case studies what we are going to follow right now. Okay, with no questions, let me go to recurrent neural networks and the long-term, short-term memory network. Yes, please. Yes, yeah.
Deep learning neural networks are highly accurate, even if features are imposed. Imposed features. Yes, what does it mean? I am new to this.
No problem. I tell you. See, suppose you are trying to solve. I ask a simple question. Quantum dilation. How do you predict drop yield?
crop yield, let us say rice or anything. Can you tell me the number of variables crop yield depends upon, let us say rice? Give me some example. I'm not able to expect. Right. So don't worry about negative marking. You can give any number of variables what you please, I'll pick one of them. Crop yield depends on number one. Water, irrigation facilities. Number two. Climate, very good. Number three. Temperature. Temperature is included climate. Very good. Type of soil. Type of seeds. Type of seeds. Fertilizer used or not? Very good. And then one more. Manure used or not? What is it called? Pesticide used or not? So I hope no agricultural expertise here. Otherwise we will beat us. You forgot all these variables. So we are all laymen as far as agriculture is concerned. So we could immediately formulate a problem now. Crop yield is depending upon these 7 variables. Now, if I give this data, you can fit multiple regression, master regression, vector regression, multiple layers, etc., and then SVM, SVR, decision trees, whole bunch of algorithms to give me predictions of crop yield at different levels of significance, different levels of prediction errors, as dictated by these algorithms. Yes or no? Yes. Now here, the variables are well defined. You can understand that you can attach a physical meaning. Whereas in the image processing, you tell me, suddenly you are watching whether that is a car or an image, sorry, a car or a vehicle or a truck or a two-wheeler, how do you detect? Not for the machine, not for the human, for the machine. So that's the reason they are coming up with nowadays. I don't know how many are active in LinkedIn. So many kind of interesting posts are coming. They are called bounding boxes. If you are able to draw bounding boxes, at least field of view vision or field of view is fixed. From that, then bother about all these things, image processing, etc. So, 7 kind of pixels make up one particular image. But then, the kind of pixels that make up a car is different kind from the kind of pixels that make up a human face. In this case, we know information at the pixel level only. Understand the point? Whereas if you put them into the kind of columns and rows, that is XY matrix, right? We get only pixel levels. So that is what we do in post matrix. Positive definition. We don't have clear-cut features which will tell you if we have these features, you can definitely define a car versus an elephant or a bird or a human, etc. etc. Is this clear or I take confuse you more? Yes, it's clear. It's clear, right? Even if features are not well defined, it gives better results.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And as if not, that is what I mean to say. It has neural networks, deep learning neural networks, not involve is informative and discriminative feature selection always. Always. No, I think you got the thing wrong. What I said is, if features are well defined, in the copied example, if features are well defined, you don't have to do anything. At the most you do, I give you now, difficult scientist suddenly comes in here, sir, we have forgotten 100 different variables. So we will listen to him, sir, what are they? He will give that the number of the matrix size increases dimensionally. 7 video, it becomes 107. Now I ask you a question. I assume out of these 107, all of them are unequally important. You will have to agree. I repeat, they are unequally important. Then as a corollary, I'll tell him, I'll pick up the most important variables, throw away unimportant variables, don't mind. I apply all of my host of feature selection algorithms. Feature selection is distinct from feature extraction. In the original place, 107 are well-defined features. Nobody has to extract features from us. Whereas the image processing actually have to extract features, they are not well-defined. Even after extraction, somebody has to do important feature pickup and throw away redundant variables. You got the point? That's the next step. So deep learning does not require well-defined features. Therefore, even if it is ill-posed, ill-defined features, still it works and gives very good results. As opposed to our shallow networks. Did it make it clear? Right. Thank you. Okay. Yes. So things like this, when information is presented in a sequential way, for example, 5th digit of your phone number, sing your favorite song beginning at the 3rd sentence, recall the 10th character of your alphabet, etc. So this requires sometimes, that is the beauty of Sanskrit, I don't know how many of you know this. Some people made a kind of scientific study. How many of you actually visited a Vedic school or maybe just passed by? Some young students chanting all mantras and all. You know how there is a scientific thing, involved in that. For example, if a kind of stotram or whatever has got 100 slokas, first of all, from top to bottom, beginning to end, they kind of get it by heart. Then in the reverse direction. Then one person does only odd number, another person gets the by heart even number. We think these people are mad. No, there is science involved in this, coming from the LSTM. So if we have to predict a particular number, which is located given by anything arbitrary, fifth digit or sixth digit, you should either know preceding numbers or succeeding numbers. That surrounding information, neighboring information you should know. Then only you can give. Brain is already well trained in this. So people made a scientific study why people read the scientific, the Sanskrit hymns in that way. There is a scientific reason behind this. We are training our mind so that there is no way of forgetting. If two priests come to your home to perform any kind of, let us say, puja or anything, one person starts, immediately other person picks up. See, just for inhaling or exhaling, this one person stops only for that reason. The other, these do not stop. Other person picks up because they got it by heart that way, like something like LSTM. It's a practical application of LSTM. Understand the point, sir? The sequential information is captured, and you can predict from any point in time. You got temporal information, right? So that kind of thing is there. So here, for example, I am fine is given. Let's say as an example. So probability I am fine, prior probability. Probability fine given that I am. Probability dot anything given fine. So these kind of conditional probabilities are getting computed. So now we are seeing a taste of probability in ML, statistics, etc. in deep learning architectures. Who can divide them? They are much stronger than wife and husband. We cannot divide them. It is much. The blue is much better than your Fevicol. So tomorrow, if somebody tells you AI, ML, data science are different, please give all these arguments. Otherwise, call me. I'm at your disposal. Okay. They are not different animals. They are totally one and the same. It's unnecessary. We are looking at it from different lenses. That's the unfortunate thing. Fine. So you may be asking about applications. Machine translation. How many of you know that Skype, when you make a call, you try to experiment this. From one side, you speak one language, other side, let him speak another language. In real time, the translation happens. Thanks to machine translation, already accomplished. And your smartphone, if it is Apple, already Siri is working there based on LSTM. The conversation agents. And my students have developed two such kind of chatbots based on deep learning architecture, bidirectional LSTM and all things we employed already. Speech recognition. So language modeling. So this has taken to a totally different dimension, natural language processing thanks to deep learning. Prior to that, we have got neural language models, something like word to vec, talk to vec, as after development of your bag of words model. But then deep learning came, you want to keep all those things with you, my LSTM can do everything. Okay? So basically, what we want to tell you is that the vanilla RNN works like this. It is simplified notation. You got input variables, X1, X2, Xn, and you got hidden nodes. But the important information about recurrent neural network is that this information is fed back to this, and in order to use the outputs. This is shorthand notation. But if you want to get expanded notation and try to see what is actually happening, get a hang of it. And before we go that, we just see these very much familiar to us. This is the bias node, W times X, that is net input. We are habituated to, right, in MLP, time plus U times HT, that is the weights in the hidden layer multiplied by hidden layer information plus bias node. All this passes to the activation function, which is sigmoid. Then you get the HT. These things we knew already, nothing is different. But then this happens at different layers now. Okay, so number of parameters is getting computed here. So this what is the shorthand notation. But if you want to expand this is what it means. You start with xt minus 1, okay, input variable information, pass it with the set of weight w, pass it through hyperbolic tangent as the activation function, do the corresponding yt minus 1 with the corresponding weight. But then pass on this information to this next layer. Again, next level of information at the time instance t is given to you. corresponding weights are actually activated from the activation function again. Again, the V matrix, the set of weights here, you get Yt. So in the bottom you see xt minus 1, xt plus 1, all these things are happening. In the upper layer, you are seeing all the predictions at the different time steps are happening. But then you can see all the hidden layers are there, the information getting passed from one layer to another layer. This is an expanded notation of recurrent neural network. But the problem here is when you come to the last layer, what happened in the previous layer is totally forgotten. This is actually useful in sequence to sequence modeling. When you create chatbot or anything, previous conversation should be remembered. When you do machine translation, previous statement should be remembered. So that is where the problem appeared. Then Hockraiter and Schmidhuber. See, some of these kind of biases are there, you know. Turing Award has been given to Intel, NGO, and then Legal. I was wondering, why not Schmidhuber? LSD, everybody is using left writing center. Is it because he is situated in Switzerland that you know? We don't know. Schmidhuber is as much kind of competent and capable as well as deserving to get the Turing Award along with those three giants. But then somehow, we don't know the reasons why he is ignored. LSTM is a very powerful architecture. Let me tell you. It's a different point that we beat it. Okay, that's a different point. In our applications, in financial applications, you can see our papers. We beat them. Okay, so yeah. So this kind of thing. It's called space. You're actually progressing in space with respect to the architecture and also in time. Time aspect. Both time and space aspects are covered here. And again, so same computations are happening at multiple layers. So then what this Schmidhuber and Hockraiter student, what they did is, we'll introduce what is known as learning by forgetting. Learning by forgetting, we humans do it. Whatever you learned in your upper primary school or maybe BTech, MTech, etc., probably you have forgotten. And that's not a sin, by the way. Because we learn new things, which are more current, relevant, etc., to perform our jobs. Some of the important things that we learned there, integral 1 by x dx is equal to log x, we cannot forget. Yes or no? No, sir, we forgot it long enough. No. Okay, some of the important things we should remember. Not everything, okay? Not every junk. Fine. So, if that is the case, these kind of architectures started in 2000, early 2000, but they did not become very prominent as LSTM. Okay, only some things are reserved. Okay, but great test, not everything. Unfortunately, science also. Fine. Because why I'm telling this, there is something called resonance parameter. How many of you know art theory, adaptive resonance theory? Whenever new sample comes, Carpenter and Rosberg said, is this sample new or not? How much of new information is present here? People forgot that now. But the same kind of thing is accomplished in LSTM cell. They also talk about what is the newness of this information. Can we use this for the subsequent layer, subsequent cell in LSTM? You forgot visualization. They're doing it a different way, not to do that. I was wondering why not use that. Then there again is a problem. Let me tell you. Fine. So backpropagation, all these things happen again. The same things what we talked about variance, the gradient explosion, gradient vanishing, all these things apply here also because again it is heavily depending on your backpropagation. And then of course depending on the loss function, okay, loss function. Earlier people used to say cost function. Suddenly deep learning community uses loss function. You have to create a table like what I created. Please, I am telling you seriously. Even for pedagogy, you know, when you teach the students ultimately should not be confused. Present these kind of unified tables, and then they will be with you in the class. Otherwise, you will be in this orthogonal direction, they will be in this direction. And you think that you have done your best job. Students they think in a totally different way, and then when it comes to project execution, you will face a lot of problems. Students will not face any problems. They think they are doing correctly. You will recognize that you are facing problem. Then you scratch the head 1,000 times. Where that thing went wrong. Understand the point? So let us make the things clear in terms of terminology, and just like notation. So loss function or whatever you call it, yes, you can take a cross entropy or you can take a MSV value also, still they do the good job. Now comes the chain rule of differentiation. That is where I am going to show you quickly. See this guy. This is all chain rule, right? Dou E3 by dou Y3, dou Y3 by dou X3, dou X3 by dou Xk, dou Xk by dou W. chain rule of differentiation. But here, if you look at it, this guy here, the problem when you have multiple hidden layers. And that way actually multiplied by your pi notation. Pi notation means multiplications of those things are happening across different hidden layers or hidden neurons. And when the neuron, when the derivative is very small, that is multiplied constantly by other kind of derivatives, it becomes close to zero. That means your total derivative becomes zero. That means you are not contributing anything. New information is not being learned. Vanishing gradient problem. What we have seen in convolutional neural network in RBM, same thing happens here also. So that is a common thread, as a kind of motivation for deep learning architectures. So I'll quickly go through this. Culprit is this guy. It was a hero, as I told you. Angel and hero suddenly became culprit. Yes, we have to live with it. What to do? Life changes. These are other kind of solutions. ReLU people use, rectified linear unit and several other variants are there. I'll skip all that. So this is what is long dependence, long distance dependencies. So what happened at this level, if it is forgotten when you are making predictions here, then it's a problem. As I told you in machine translation and then chatbot development. People therefore went for LSTM network. So LSTM, they're basically having target gate, input gate, and output gate. And each cell, they coin a new word called cell now. What's that? Oh, I have got only 25 minutes. I will just quickly skim through. Because I have got interesting case studies. I don't want you to miss them. Okay. Okay. So this is where the cell state gets changed. Forget gate comes now. Okay. XT gets multiplied with the HT minus 1. Okay. Here concatenated with the corresponding weight. Again, our bias node will not change. This sigma means sigma operation, and then FT comes here. Then same kind of thing happens here. The next layer. Okay. So like this, multiple operations happen in forget gate, input gate, and then output gate. And finally, when it comes out, the past information is restored and preserved. That is the beauty of LSTM. Please remember this. And like this, you should use multiple LSTM cells when you devise a LSTM architecture for time series forecasting problems, machine translation problems, and your chatbot development, and all these problems, NLP, NLU, all these problems. Okay, so let me quickly, GAN is very important. So this is the first case study. Okay, diabetic retinopathy detection using transfer learning and deep learning. So this is the normal retina. So unfortunately, what happens is for diabetic people, other parts of the body get affected, but most important part is they say. But the eyes also get affected. Unfortunately, the retina gets badly affected, which is the reflecting agent. So the image that does not get formulated here properly, and then people cannot see. So the visibility gets affected very badly unless you treat it. Okay. So how to detect this? So we have several studies have been done. So as is normal customary practice, that we actually do a literature survey. I'm skipping all this. So the contribution is this. So basically, we went for inception ResNet. It's a combination. Inception net is there, ResNet is there. We took a combination of that, and then it actually did wonders for us. And we took two data sets here. Fortunately, they are available in the public space, public domain. Okay, I will show you. So these are kind of gradation. People start with LXNet, VGNet, ResNet, and this is the latest architecture. We use that, and do the same thing what we're talking about. So, and then here what we did different variations of the image, For example, if you introduce noise into the image, how well your architecture will detect it. That kind of experiments called sensitive analysis. We did that also. Which we tilted the angle. We blurred it artificially, just to see how good is our architecture to detect the retinopathy, the retina. So these are the, you can say, pipeline what we created for this, and we did all these image augmentation methods. So input image passes through inception ResNet to be the version 2, and then dropout mechanism is there. Multiple convolution layers are there here, and then finally they get concatenated. Then we go for global max pooling. Finally, fully connected layer actually performs classification through softmax. Okay, so this data set is about these are hardware and software environment. Mesidor. Messidor is a famous data set, which is that these are the description about the data set. 4 different grades are there in retinopathy, starting from grade 0, lowest to the highest grade. And then we also took Kaggle data. I'm sure all of you know about Kaggle, right? Kaggle data is also there, across data we call it. And then 5 different grades are there. And these are the results. So GoogleNet with transfer learning, it gives 66% accuracy, whereas we got hybrid inception as ResNet in our research, we got 17%. A jump of 6% in accuracy, which is considerable, let me tell you. Of course, we can, the rooftop, 100% is the thing people try. Maybe that is the fun of research. In some other architectures, we actually get that. Then these are the hyperparameters. And then we went, did the same thing for Aptos, we got 82%. This is one data set nobody has worked. So there is no baseline to compare, right? So this is what we got. These are the conclusions. Let me quickly go through these references. Then GAN. So GAN is a fantastic thing that has happened actually to deep learning community. I would say it's a magic compared to other architectures. It's a real magic. See, nowadays you can't even if I give a story to you, it becomes a big challenge to you to tell apart whether it is written by a human being or a machine or a GAN. Very difficult. In fact, okay, I did not have those slides here, but what I refer to is you just go to MIT website, please search for Shelley. Shelley is the name of the software which has created horror stories. Please try to read one paragraph. First of all, you will be scared. Second thing is, you will not even figure out whether it is written by a human or a machine. It is actually written by GAN. Not only that. So why all these things happen? Just see. These some people who are challengers, they are keep on challenging the scientific community. They are challenging this AI general community, saying that you are doing all these things. What you are doing is number crunching only. What's the big deal about it? Humans still lie in fine arts. You please come here and then try to do something. Fine arts includes your poetry, and then music composition, painting, etc., etc. Now, state of the art tells that humans are almost defeated there, almost. So let us not challenge anybody, because otherwise it becomes Robo version 2. Robo 2, all of us remember, right? Let us talk AI to some extent. And many of you do not know, that is the reason there is, because of this kind of moral debate that is happening in the US, many of the things Google did not participate in the DARPA projects. They said flatly refused, we will not cooperate with the defense mechanism, defense department. They said, there are some ethical issues. But the other countries, like big neighbor we have, no qualms. They are also big, AML. Their company started collaborating with their military. So that is the number one in military, the AML, not your US anymore. Because ethics. Understand what I'm saying? But in US there is clear line drawn. No, I think that we should not apply. And then Google did not, it's a documented thing, you can see in newsletters. Google refused to work with the defense department. Anyway, so CAD, such is the kind of things happening. So I'll just straight away go to the architecture per se. Again, this is driven by probability computations, by the way. One more instance of saying you cannot draw a line in the water. I'm telling you repeatedly so that it sinks in. And my purpose is, of coming here. So these are two images. This is the ground truth, actual person. This is created by GAN. You can't make out. Just can't make out. Similarly too, which one is computer generated? Try to figure out. And just give this user edits, you can come out with beautiful paintings. And they created celebrities which are non-existing. These celebrities, so-called celebrities, GAN gave the images. They are not existing humans. They are nowhere available in the world. But such kind of beautiful diagrams is true. Maybe in the future they will come. We don't know. So GAN is a magic that I will tell you that way. So this is very interesting thing. I needed to spend some time on this. Anyway, so there are two competing architectures. Let me go to the architecture. So here we got real world images. Okay, database. We'll take a sample. And then simultaneously, you try to generate a fake sample. A fake sample generated by random distribution. Usually they take Gaussian distribution. And then from this generation, you just take a sample, which means you pick up, right? And this sample generated artificially vis-a-vis the actual sample, go to the discriminator. Discriminator is a network. By the way, generator as well as discriminator both are neural networks. Now, discriminator tries to separate between the fake image and the real image, and it does a classification, right? Like red and green, you know. Fake means red one, and real means the green one. So once that it is depicting, it gives a loss function. It makes an error, right? And that loss function is back propagated. Understand? So now here, GAN is a very, I would say, something like meta heuristics. All of you would remember, right? Meta heuristics is nothing but we give a skeleton of the algorithm, and you fill what you want to fill there. For example, PSO is a meta heuristic. Simulated drilling is a meta heuristic. Genetic algorithm is a meta heuristic. I tell you, you have to generate a population of solutions randomly, and then go for initial search, then generate neighbor solutions about that. Neighboring solutions, we call it local search, and then perform exploration, exploitation, and then this shopping criterion. That's all. My algorithm is over. What did I describe? I described nothing. But what I gave you is a skeleton. Depending on the kind of problem that you are solving, you have to start adding flesh and other things. Then it becomes an algorithm. Similarly, here, GAN gives you a meta-heuristic kind of framework. What that means is, in the case of generator and discriminator, you can use MLP, for example, or a shallow network like MLP or RBF, anything as you please. Otherwise, you can choose a complex network like CNN at here, the both the places, or LSTM at the both the places, depending on the context where you are working. That is the beauty about GAN. You understand? If we talked about the negative aspects of GAN, generating deep fakes and other things, deep fake, have you heard? Deep fake means, suppose now I am giving a lecture here on some technical topic like this. Using deep fake algorithm, I can be construed as speaking some nonsense here, which is totally kind of incriminating. The algorithm can create such kind of things in videos. People have done that and shown. So to beat the deep fakes, again, algorithms have come already. Otherwise, see, there were cases in which US president was shown to be speaking something rubbish. He did not speak, but it's a kind of handiwork of GAN. So these are the negative effects. The positive effects are that when you deal with unbalanced data, GAN creates fantastic samples, artificial samples, which are as close as possible to the original samples. Why do we need them? In applications like fraud detection, churn prediction, bankruptcy prediction, intrusion detection, and many other kind of examples, by design, the data sets are unbalanced. If we deal with unbalanced data, all the entire host of machine learning and edifice of statistical algorithms, all of them falter very badly because all of them are statistical in nature. What that means is, the more and more examples of one class you present to them, they learn only the characteristics of that class and ignore the minority class. Minority class means class having very small samples. But our problem lies in identifying small samples, that is minority class only. For example, fraud. Because we don't have so many instances of fraud, we cannot present those many examples to the network, whichever network it is. That means we go for data sampling method, the data oversampling methods, undersampling methods. These are called data balancing methods. GAN helps in that. These are the positive applications. So that is how it is. And yeah, we did this. We worked with the fraud detection data set. And they are working in hierarchical optimization. Once generator is optimizing, discriminator is stopped at the frozen at the previous stage. Once the discriminator is getting optimized, generator is frozen at the previous stage. It is now called alternating optimization, something that happens in fuzzy C-means. Okay, that's the meaning of locking, you know. So yeah, mathematically, this is nothing but the expectation, okay, of the probability coming from the original distribution, log of that dx, okay, the loss function, and then plus, and then expectation of the log of d of gx, okay. So here, this is the generated value. Again, d of that we are taking, combine both. This is coming from the generator, this is coming from the discriminator. Both the loss functions we are adding and minimizing. This can be viewed like a 2% zero-sum game. So people are depicting this as a game theoretic problem also. Then policy gradients and all these things come from reinforcement learning category. So GAN's literature has gone tremendously large because of this. And multiple variations of GAN have already come, depending on the distance metric, depending on the loss functions and all. Fine. So, just see, man with glasses, images, minus man without glasses, plus woman without glasses. The result is women with glasses. It looks very intuitive, but actually Gary achieved it. It's logical also. You take images from man, from them you remove glasses. It is very useful application, you know. For example, in ATMs nowadays people go with, some people, not everybody, they go with helmet etc. for mischief, you know. So we can use these architectures to actually figure out without helmet and without mask. Thanks to COVID, mask has come down. You do not know what the other person is expressing. I don't know how many people are actually exporting, you know, separating us from lunch. I don't know because of the mask. So it protects two things, you know, societal application as well as COVID, prevention from COVID. We don't know. Such kind of thing. Plus women, then it becomes women with glasses. So these are adverse advantages of CAN, etc. These are the ones that we did for credit card fraud detection. The process, you know what happened, quickly skim through this. Now we have 10 more minutes, no problem. Yes, very exciting study that we did. Waterstein dam, basically without depending on the Kullback Leisler and divergence or J's divergence. Okay, we went for Waterstein distance. That gave a better result. In fact, I will show you all that. So these are credit card fraud detection data available in the public domain. We took. Look at the thing, you know, number of frauds is so large. 99% frauds, 99% genuine observations versus 0.1% fraudulent transactions. We did that with CAN, okay, with our oversampling. So did the configuration. Look at the false positive. So important thing about this is we have to identify fraud to be fraud. Not only that, we should not make false positives. You should not identify a genuine transaction or a genuine customer to be fraudulent. That is going to be much more disastrous, you know. In many of the problems, what happens is, many of the institutions all over the world, they try to achieve very good hit rate. Hit rate means identifying fraud to be fraud. But that is accompanied, unfortunately, by very huge false positive rate. Understand that? So you have to minimize both. Maximize the hit rate, minimize the false positive. That is what we achieved here. You can see that. Plain SVM, so many false positives. We went for, see, analysis studies we did, mode plus CAN plus SVM. This is one way of data balancing. CAN is doing the second level of data balancing plus classifier SVM. We gave brought down and false positives from 2900 to 512, 1/6 reduction. Okay, and then precision recall accuracy. You see nothing is directly affected. That is the beauty here. You can see. This we did with SVM. The same thing we did logistic regression. And Waterstein dam plus logistic regression 78 false positives compared to 3,394. While precision recall is 0.85 in sensitivity. Okay. Fine. We did all this. So these also presented in international paper. And then some more are there. Face recognition. I'll just quickly go through. These for banking applications, you know. Face recognition we did. This architecture we gave the face image and then cropped the face. Then we trained with FaceNet. FaceNet is another architecture deep learning based. And then 128 dimension embeddings are done. And if the threshold is the distance is less than threshold, here we got a knowledge base of faces. Okay, who must enter MVSR and others should not enter. Let us say face recognition module you want to keep at the gate. Then that knowledge base of faces is there, face base, and then less than the threshold limit. Then don't discard that person, otherwise just accept and then go for majority voting. This kind of architecture we developed, and yeah. And for this again we took help of public domain databases like Georgia Tech based database. These are all public domain, and these are very interesting problems. Let me tell you, I strongly urge all of you to work on these things. Because of the COVID, you know, we could not work further. The student did 3 projects with me, 3 modules of the project, but then we have to stop somewhere in the middle because in April 2020, suddenly doors were shut. He wanted to come, I said, sorry, you can't come because my team doesn't allow me to come also. So project had to be curtailed, And otherwise, we ordered for a Raspberry Pi, that actually came to Chennai and got ordered in the airport. We could not get that because of the COVID and all this. Otherwise, we wanted to install that at Hyderabad Gate and all that. Anyway, so the things are like this. We got very high percentage of transfer learning we did. 96.667% compared to other methods like PCA, wave-related TCP, and Walsh transformation. So we got much better than the 20% higher than the state-of-the-art report results. Then we went for other things like ResNet with shared features. This handwritten character recognition. I tell you, handwritten character. This is the last page, by the way. I want to see some smiling faces. Yes, you are smiling. I am smiling. Thank you. Because I tell you, these are not dry subjects. You have to make fun, embedded in the pedagogy. I'm just telling you from experience. When you teach your students, everything can be bouncer, like Cobra bouncer. It should be half volley, they should play. They should play means you have to make crack some jokes, make some anecdotes, bring them real to their life. Then only they will understand, they will assimilate and understand. And then remember, not just academic novelty that happens in the exam. No, they should be able to implement on the ground. That requires all this, otherwise it's very dry subject. Fine. So we did handwritten character recognition. Online is very easy. I did not know until we did the project. Offline handwritten recognition is much tougher, even now, as you see. So we took the example of bank checks. It was a difficult project. The images, about 1,000 were given to by some bank, I cannot name. But then we could locate only the logo of the bank. Remaining 5 fields we could not locate. Thanks to COVID, we had to shut down the project. Unfortunately, but that itself is a good thing we presented in this conference. So I'm referring to these kind of conferences. What you're doing here and the kind of papers that I've seen, I must really appreciate, the organizers here. You've done a fantastic job, I must tell you. From bottom of my heart, I'm appreciating. Fine. So RCMM, character error rate, that should be minimum. At the character level also, error rate should be this kind of rate. This architecture again, 50 goes through. So we got, there is IM dataset, that is public domain. Synthesized dataset from, there. What's the name? Okay, I'll tell you. This is dataset. This is again coming from public domain. There is another dataset that we created. We have our PG DBT students, right? PG Diploma in Banking Technology. We took all their answer sheets, marked the names and all. We created dataset from that, handwritten. That dataset we are referring to, we did not make it public. These are our student answer sheets. Excellent. MERE means mean average precision. That is our usual metric adopted there, handwritten character recognition. We got highest here. And then character error rate. In our approach, we got very low compared to the previous methods, TrainIt and other things. So these are one. And thank you so much. I'm open to questions. Yeah, please.
Machine learning and deep learning algorithms. One thing all AI scientists talk about is the yes, Mohammed Abdul Azim. One thing they talk about is the data set. Standard data set they need, right? Without data set, they can't go further. That's the first thing. Second thing is high computing power is required because you have the algorithms, very vast amount of computation that is required, right? But still, there are many areas. It's not just the computers I'm talking about. You take the mechanical area, you take any other domain, engineering domain or medical domain or any other domain you take, where at the end we need some optimization technique in order to prove the work they have done is rather, to be correct. So in order to prove them correct, optimization technique people were using from the neural networks for so long. But now after a lot of advancements that have come into being into AI, after deep learning and all, they are restricting the people from such domains from using these kind of algorithms. I mean, for example, I'm working in wireless sensor networks. sensors, they program batteries, they're going to be drained after a certain amount of time. We didn't find so far everlasting batteries to run the sensors. So now my question is, in order to predict, for example, a lot of papers I have seen in recent time, people have applied this in the machine learning algorithms in even our WSN after it has been merged with the IoTs. In order to predict the certain set of sensors to be identified to be trustworthy or not, to predict that whether they are trustworthy or not and how long they are going to be trustworthy. For that, this AI algorithm still, of course, works. And many of the papers I've seen, they have used this AI algorithm, machine learning algorithm, but still, what I found, my question is, how far the sensors are going to bear the computing power that it needs, rather, right? When they cannot give the enough power to run those algorithms, then predicting the things will be in a vacuum, rather. So how can you can probably suggest like one of such algorithm which I've come across with Markov model, a simple Markov model where you can see it takes the current state of information instead of taking the past statistics. Whereas in AI you talk about past statistics. Data set comes from past statistics, right? It's some heuristic information. But taking the current state of information in the real time to predict how far it's going to be trustworthy. Can you suggest some algorithm in this area with the limitations of computing power?
It's a long question. So I want to paraphrase your question in short words. Basically, you want to know, first of all, how do you measure trust is something not defined, at least not defined to me. Okay, how do you measure trust? Is it measurable quantitatively?
I can tell you the ratio, how many packets it has received. There are a lot of parameters that we can rather take into consideration. I'm thinking about one particular parameter, like for example, packet delivery ratio.
Okay.
So how many packets that it has sent and how many it has received. I mean, if it is dropping continuously from further subsequent nodes, we identify that it has a. But this is one. I'm telling you one parameter. But there are a lot of other parameters we can take into consideration to identify that whether it's a trustworthy or not.
Yeah. So I kind of understood now. Maybe the immediate answer that comes to my mind is to create some kind of redundancy. I'm talking from the reliability engineering perspective. For example, if you think that for your application, 10 wireless sensors are required, maybe you create a redundancy of 5 more. And then try to go in for what is known as hot redundancy. When you see that the battery life is depleting at a fast rate out of, let's say 4 out of 10, then immediately the control should switch over to the 5, which are in idle so far, but then the action. But then how it is done is something that itself should not become a big research problem. You understand the point? So that is one way of answering the question. The second thing is through federated learning. If you think that majority of the computing power is actually taken by the local nodes, and that computation should be actually conducted at the master node, at some other server level, and then the minimal kind of computation, which is only the inferencing part or the testing part, should be done here. The training part should not be done here at the nodes per se. If you do that, definitely battery consumption can be minimized. So these are some immediate thoughts that come to my mind because I have not worked in this area yet. But I've seen some papers actually dealing with these things. Sorry? Training definitely takes more computing time. That is the reason people are nowadays going for federated learning. See, for example, they call it edge intelligence. So in edge intelligence, what happens is we don't try to run the backprop algorithm at the mobile level or even at the small node level, right? When they are all hooked up through IoT mechanism, so the edge intelligence must happen only from that inferencing stage. You should be able to run a fraction of the algorithm at that particular level, but not the training aspect. Training consumes a lot of time. That is one aspect, and create some kind of hot redundancy. Maybe together it can solve the problem, but it is at a high level description. Maybe missing some other details of the problem which could not be described in a short time. Does it make sense? Yes. Yeah. See, so some of the problems cannot be modeled just like this. We have to actually sit together and do. But I'm sure that this kind of problems can be solved. Maybe incrementally, we can solve them. I hope I answered the question. Thank you. Any other question, please? Any other question?
Hello, sir. Sir, I just have a fun question from our students. Is it possible to build a deep fake virtual assistant?
Deep fake?
Virtual assistant. What I ask is that if when we communicate with Google,
Understood. Yeah. It fools you. Rather than giving proper information, it fools you.
Yes, sir.
Why not? If humans can be faked, why not chatbot?
Yes, sir.
So that is what is not. In fact, you raised a very important question. This is called adversarial ML. There's a different topic right now going on when everything can be attacked. In cybersecurity domain, why not your AI ML systems? The training data can be attacked. The model can be attacked. The test data can be attacked. We are actually working on such kind of problems now. So how to create an attack and show that you are really vulnerable when you apply AML models. For example, this particular thing you are saying virtual assistant.
Yes,
I can attack that and always make sure that it gives irrelevant and stupid answers.
Okay, sir.
It is something like a standard example is there. A driverless car, the algorithm can be attacked and say that when actually there is a stop sign, I will make sure that the algorithm detects the stop sign as turning right. Or no sign is there and it goes and hits. That is called adversarial attack. It can be done. Why not?
Okay, sir.
But then people also try to find out defense mechanism for that. You have to do both. You should not stop at one. Then that is not a contribution to society.
Yes.
Okay, next.
One other last question. As you have mentioned that GPT-3 algorithm, it has 175 billion parameters and it is increasing the carbon footprint. How can we reduce this in future? I mean, we have to think.
That's what I'm saying. So people are coming out with, very interesting question. Some of the researchers from University of Berkeley, California, Berkeley, and then MIT, they are working in this particular aspect, at the hardware level as well as software level, how to make the things energy efficient. That is number one. Second thing is, you can always build some alternatives to the transformer. Transformer is the culprit here, the underlying architecture. So I would say if you can come with statistically equivalent kind of, I'm saying statistically, not numerically, statistically equivalent performance with a kind of parsimonious architecture than the transformer, you should be content with that. In the process, it's a kind of trade-off, You are making a trade-off between the performance on one hand and the carbon footprint on the other hand. To me, it is a bi-objective optimization problem. Therefore, you will always end up with a compromise solution. That compromise I would like to make with the performance, but at the same time, I am better off with the carbon footprint. You understand? So it can be done. People are working on that, at the hardware level, at a different level in the universities. They're coming up with new architectures, hardware architectures, and they to actually reduce. Optical neural networks are coming up also, They reduce these kind of things, energy efficient.
It's basically like application-specific integrated circuits.
Beyond that. Rather than taking the electronic impulses, they take the work on the optical sensors, optical inputs, the optical neural networks. MIT group is working on that.
Okay, sir. Understood.
Well, any more questions? If not, I thank the organizers once again for inviting me here and for sharing my thoughts and research studies. Yes, please.
Sir, while listening your of this topic seminar, I got one doubt that some drawbacks in like black box which does not give good transparency of data. Why can't you link the blockchain technology with the data mining which gives the transparency of data? or any projects or researchers going on the two
Yes.
linkages?
So blockchain solves certain problems, but also it crops up different set of problems. Okay, so people are actually again. So when you talk about blockchain, this also increases carbon footprint. Okay, so while you address one problem, other problem automatically gets popped up. That is one aspect of it. Secondly, there is increasing convergence happening between 5G, blockchain, and then AML. So this convergence, in fact, there are some interesting survey papers. So I encourage all of you to actually look at the recent survey papers. Survey papers are actually throwing up a lot of IP, the intellectual property, free of cost. I tell you one thing: when you write a survey, normal research paper, what is the input you are giving to the society and community? You are giving some IP, right? Intellectual property. At the same time, if you write a survey paper, you are giving host of open research problems which are unknown to the community. Free of cost, underline, bold, italics, free of cost, you are giving open research problems to the community, which that doesn't come so easily, right? It's not like Harry Potter that you can get a research problem just like that. Therefore, I suggest you to write survey papers and also to read a lot of survey papers. Just to tell you where these papers are available, there are journals like IEEE Access, Journal of Network and Computer Applications, JNCA, another host of journals. And then proceedings of the IEEE is different from IEEE transactions. Impact factor is 10. They also published a lot of survey papers. AICM computing reviews. So that is where if you read thoroughly, they address all these questions. What is the state of the art lying and what are the open research problems where to work further. But this problem people are addressing already.
Sir, while referring your total researches, I was got through the blockchain was linked to data science and you done one research paper on
in blockchain.
Yes.
Yeah. So okay.
You have done so many
smart blockchain.
With
Yeah, we
science.
coined a word smart blockchain. How after applying data science, blockchain can become intelligent.
Yeah, you have.
We wrote a survey paper
yes,
in
sir,
that
I
with
have
our students.
Through it. It got
Yes.
some interesting to me.
We did not work much further because see whether you like or not, my interests are varied. Right, that's how my career has been. So I love being diverse. Okay, work in many areas. So in some areas are very close to my heart. We keep contributing more and more there. But wherever there is any chance, we won't leave. And fortunately, I got a good set of students every time. They are really, while we motivate them, they're also hardworking. Sincerity and hardworking students are very important pillars. You alone cannot do much without students' active participation. And they are all enthused to get a research paper. They see that they have achieved the conquer the world. So that kind of glow in the eyes is something very rewarding to the teacher. Okay. So keep publishing. Okay. Happy data science. AML subsumed. Please don't draw waters, lines in the waters. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much for your session, sir. And for a few of them, just a few highlight points. First one, don't become a fool with a tool. Always remember that statistics is more important than implementation. And second, don't draw lines in the water. This means don't take AI, machine learning, and deep learning as a different aspects of the theory, but they are all clubbed together and they all have applications which beyond a human industry. Then neural networks, and then convolutional neural networks, then RNN, and at last, I would advise all of you when you visit the MIT, don't get scared. And then the second one, when you see that United States of the president of the United States is speaking some blabbering, please remember that it's GAN process. Because of GAN, you are seeing that United States president is speaking some blabbering. Okay, then let's hope that this deepfake virtual assistants will not come to reality. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. In fact, when we were thinking, we need a session for 2 hours and the session has to give an overview. of deep learning approach, I think that could itself be an impossible task. Trying to talk about an area in 2 hours. But I think Sir was the first name I got because we listened to your talk in STTP and quite overwhelming. And today's talk was equally overwhelming, sir. Someone to share his research experience, which is not often found in blogs or textbooks. I think that experience is what matters and what helps us to move our research forward. Thanks a lot for sharing a lot of that wisdom, sir. And it has been an honor to listen to your talk once again, sir. Thank you. I request our head of the department, Professor J. Prasnakumar, sir, to please present a token of our gratitude to our chief guest, Professor Ravi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. May I request coordinator to join the First the coordinators along with all the supporting the team, and then all of us. Yeah. So the Ramana and others who are there. Murli, very good. Now your manager. Padi Prasad, Srikanth, meeting. Thank you. So please join Venkata conversation. I hope it was useful. Very, very good. Very good, sir. And I hope it was useful.
Yes, sir.
So the only thing is the audience will just with you, not offer the water also. I think glass of water. Can you share the link with me?
Sure.
Yes. Right, thank you. All of you, please join for a photograph. Lunch is over. Okay, okay. Okay, okay. No problem.
I request faculty and all the organizing team members to please join for lunch in our canteen. Yeah, please wait for a moment. Let us all have a photograph.